Good evening. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz. That is Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait. I have no introduction because I've run out of Pop Tart Bowl jokes. So, welcome to the 2024 On the Sports Lines Year End Awards. Again, you can only do so many before they get stale, like Pop Tarts. Anyway, for some, 2024 was a year of highs. For others, 2024 was a year of lows. Tonight, as we hand out 10 awards, we will recognize the good, the bad, and whatever the F that was during the past 364 days. I can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow on New Year's Eve from our taping. Sorry. Along the way, we'll have some of the OTSL family join us, and also the three of us will tell you why we love sports in 2024, and we'll air our grievances about 2024. I know Festivus was a week ago, but roll with me here. But we like to start with an opening statement, and I figured we would do it with the following statement. We'll start with you, Jay, when I say this. 2024 was a busy year. Some would also say a messy year, but this was one of the busiest in sports memory, Jay.
Yeah, our calendar year on the sports lines is always busy, but an Olympic year always increases our op tempo, if you will. We did 31 shows in 2024, guys. It's three more than we did the year before, and the summer games in Paris were a pretty big reason why. I mean, we covered those games on three straight shows between the end of July and the middle of August. Those games gave us so much to talk about, and that was evident in the nominees for our awards. I mean, gymnastics, swimming, basketball, track and field, and so much more. Um, Women's U.S. national team in soccer for the and more part. You know, Yankees and Mets played well into October. While the Giants and Jets were getting underway, made for a very busy autumn. But hey, that's better than the alternative, right, guys? Which is a winter where there is no point in talking about the denizens of MetLife Stadium past Halloween, let alone Thanksgiving, which unfortunately has been the case for us this year. At least not in a good way. The NFL always, gives us plenty to talk about. The season's been no different. College football, we had a 12 team CFP field
We're
this
still
year.
currently going through, by the way. We're in
Yeah,
the quarterfinals as of
which,
right
which which gave us bracketology across two sports, and y'all know how much I love bracketology. Stanley Cup and NBA playoffs gave us gave us a nice dose of the Rangers and Knicks to talk about, and both men's and women's college basketball were front and center for March. Though this year the women's probably had more eyeballs on them. 2024 gave us even more of the Caitlin Clark effect, which I don't see it dissipating anytime soon, and that is a good thing for sports. It has indeed been a very busy year in sports, and it gave us plenty of good, bad, ugly, crazy, and everything else in between, which gave us more nominees than usual for awards for this show. The world of sports keeping us busy on the sports line is never something we'll complain about, guys.
Anthony, now
Yeah.
complain.
Yeah. First off, Rabbi, hot tots never go stale. All right, they're good through a
True.
nuclear war,
That's true,
a nuclear
actually.
bomb.
That's
That's
true.
number one.
That is a good point.
That's number one. And number two, look, this year, obviously, doing it with you guys and Joseph Foro, who's a good friend who joins us on the football season, and obviously the rest of the on the sports line family. The last 12 months has just been fun. I mean, just as a sports fan, it's been a great distraction under many circumstances. Obviously, we did a show on election night. That's a good example of that. But also, just because no one wants to get caught up in politics under any circumstances, regardless of what party you're affiliated with. But for the last 12 months, we have seen just what we think we've seen it all. We can take it to another level. And they say in sports, you can't script it. We started the year with an overtime Super Bowl that could have gone either way. We saw a great NCAA tournament, men's and women's tournament. When we saw UConn being the first team to repeat as national champions in 2 decades, and on the women's side of that bracket, we saw some great storylines as far as really the future of women's basketball. If you want to take it to the next level, the spring we saw the Rangers and they give us some memorable moments in their postseason runs, respectively. We saw a Stanley Cup final that almost could have went. We almost saw a historic comeback in that one, and we saw at least in the NBA Finals, we saw a duo, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, finally get into the mountaintop. As far as the promise of championship glory that you saw these two come in into Boston with. They honestly, Jay, you mentioned the Summer Olympics and everything that happened there, and I'll talk about that more later on the show. But little did we all know by August that we will see the kind of October baseball that we saw and that we haven't seen in a very long time. And the Yankees, while they were off the charts and they had some dramatic moments, the Yankees were a favorite in the American League to at least get to the ALCS. But they came through with everything and finally healthy because last year they were an injury-riddled mess that missed the postseason. But no one saw the Mets doing what they were doing. I'm a diehard Mets fan. And if you told me back in April when they were 0-5, they would be 2 games away from a Subway Series, I would have took that bet 10 times over. But yeah, we've seen everything. Bad football to kind of give us something to joke about through the last 17 weeks of the NFL season.
Not funny.
Well, to me, it's
not funny to us, that's for sure.
It's partly funny to me, and also Rabbi.
Actually, it might be funny to Jay about it.
And also, like I just saw, and because Rabbi and I are sports fans, we got to see Cody finish the story. That was a hallmark of April, right?
All right,
I had to put that out there.
I figured you would have to put that out there. Now, what's really interesting about this year is just everything is kind of an extreme. Obviously, in Olympic year, you're going to have a lot of different things going on, but with what happened in baseball, the highs of baseball, the highs of the runs of the Rangers and Knicks going into mid-May for the first time in a while, and the lows of the Giants and Jets, which are historic right now. And again, even though you have to make fun of it, you just have to sit there and be like, that's attention right there, even if you don't like it or not. And so just even locally, it's interesting. But I think nationally, we're going to see tonight, we've had a lot of interesting stories and some very, very good nominees. Speaking of that, let's hand out some awards. Statues not included on Tight on Budget. We'll talk about it in fiscal year 2025. I worry every year that whoever gets nominated for our first award of the night and Baby New Year Rookie of the Year is not going to have success in the future. And when I look back on this in 10 years, we're going to look stupid. But these are 4 nominees who are going to transcend their sports. And they were drafted first or second overall. So guess what? We know they're going to be good, and we're already seeing if they're going to be good. Here are the nominees. Caitlin Clark, guard, Indiana Fever. If you're not impressed by helping Indiana leading a 7-game turnaround from 2023 to a playoff spot this year, be impressed by transcending WNBA, making it as popular as it's ever been, and being an athlete almost as popular as any other athlete, male or female, today. Next nominee is someone who's had a lot of success at LSU and has translated to the pros, but don't worry, Caitlin Clark lovers, it's not Angel Reese. It's actually Jaden Daniels, quarterback, Washington Commanders. The number 2 overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft is commanding the Washington Commanders, putting DC in the postseason for the first time since 2020, giving them 11 wins for the first time since their Super Bowl year in Super Bowl 2026 back in 1992. And his arm and his legs providing the energy. Next nominee is someone who had a lot of success at LSU translating to the pros, but don't worry, Caitlin Clark fans, it's not Angel Reese again. It's Paul Skeens, pitcher of Pittsburgh Pirates. You don't usually have an under 2 ERA in your rookie season or start the All-Star game in your rookie season, but the unanimous Mr. Livy Dunn, who is the most miserable man on earth, has lived up to his top building from the 2023 MLB Draft. Finally, Victor Wembanyama, San Antonio Spurs. 20-plus points per game, averaging double-digit rebounds, nominated for Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie, and he just put up 40-plus on Christmas at MSG. Could easily say he's one of the best in the NBA already, just getting started. And the winner is, you should have to win something, and it's a big one. Caitlin Clark. It's CC's World J, and we're just paying rents.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for what Jaden Daniels has done for the Commanders. I mean, leading the franchise out of the wilderness of the Dan Snyder era with a combination of skills, leadership, and a ridiculous clutch gene.
Ridiculous
along with an
question.
it factor that was described by Ben Standick, who's the beat writer for The Athletic, as, quote, everything everywhere all at once. Yes, he borrowing from the movie. That's going to have Washington in the playoffs for the first time since 2020, and it should make him the offensive rookie of the year. And what Victor Wembanyama, who won the NBA Rookie of the Year, finished second as for Defensive Player of the Year in the spring, has continued his ascent this winter. 25.5 points per game, 10 boards, 4 blocks. Skeens won Nationally Rookie of the Year, started for them in the All-Star game, finished third in the Cy Young voting, 11-3 record, 1.96 ERA, 11.5 strikeouts per nine, and a 0.97 whip. I mean, what they have done to give such recently moribund franchises as the San Antonio Spurs and Pittsburgh Pirates hope for the future is awesome. But, as you said, Rabbi, Caitlin Clark winning this award was the no-brainer Captain Obvious choice of all no-brainer Captain Obvious choices, and that would be a colossal understatement. Clark's numbers, especially after the Olympic break, speak for themselves. If anyone needed a month off, it was Clark, who went from a full season of college basketball, 39 games starting last November and ending this April in the national title game, averaging almost 35 minutes a game, including all 40 in 4 of her last 5 tournament games, to training camp, and then those first 26 games of the WNBA rookie season, where she also averaged 35 minutes a game without a breather, and it shows. Check out the splits, guys. Pre-Olympics, 26 games, 17 points, 8.2 assists, 5.8 rebounds. She shot just 40% from the floor, under 33% from 3 on over 8 attempts per game. Did shoot 89% from the line. Indiana, 11-15. Post-Olympic, 14 games, 23 points per game, 8.9 assists, 5.4 boards, 43.5% field goals, 37% from 3 on almost 10 a game, almost 93% from the line. Indiana went 9-5 down the stretch, made the playoffs. And in my opinion, guys, humbly, she wins this award as much for her effect off the court as for what she accomplished on it. I mean, we talked about her impact on women's college basketball in terms of fans at arenas and viewership on TV. The 2024 Women's College Basketball National Championship game drew the largest TV audience in the history of the sport at 18.9 million viewers. Only 4 million tuned in for the men's championship game to see UConn complete a back-to-back titles, a first in sports TV history. And Clark's impact came with her to the WNBA, which resulted in the league's biggest TV ratings ever in 2024. A WNBA record 23 regular season games went over 1 million viewers. 19 of them featured Clark and the Fever. According to Nielsen's ratings numbers, Clark's games averaged 1.19 million viewers. WNBA games without Clark averaged 394,000. Think about this, guys. Going head-to-head with the NFL on a Sunday afternoon with a WNBA playoff game, Clark's Indiana Fever drew 1.84 million viewers. Anyone who can have that huge of an impact both on and off the court at the highest level of her sport in her rookie year, despite the immense pressure and media scrutiny she was under, not to mention has been under since her junior year at Iowa, is more than deserving of this award.
Anthony, the Caitlin Clark effect is real.
Yeah, it's absolutely is. And we think about a couple of the WNBA games having to be moved to NBA-sized venues to accommodate the demand to see Caitlin Clark when the Indiana Fever has been in town. And also, obviously, we're Liberty fans, you and I, Jay and Rabbi as well. There was, like, a couple of the notable sellouts early on was with Caitlin Clark in tow. Keep in mind, the Fever started out, 1-10 at one point, 2-11, to start to see with a ridiculous difficult schedule.
The schedule was so catered to national TV.
Yeah, they played I think, what was it, 13, 14 games like a 3-week span, which was unheard of for WNBA standards. But one of the things in this whole calendar year, what I've been impressed with is how Caitlin Clark has handled being under that microscope. I mean, she said the right things. There have been obviously critics have thrown darts away. Whether it's the chauvinist media, social media trolls, whether it's Cheryl Swoops, a women's basketball great, kind of taking kind of pot shots on her on the air and off the air. She's handled it very well with a lot of maturity for her age. People forget that she's still a young woman. She's maturing. And the fact that she's handled it very well. You think about how the year started. She became basketball's all-time leading scorer, passing Pistol Pete on a women's what was becoming a signature, the logo 3, in a nationally televised game, and then leading Iowa back to the national championship game. And from almost literally from jump, she jumped right into the WNBA. And Jay, you mentioned that the time off was probably the best. The best that probably happened to her was not being forced onto Team USA women's basketball because the sports media just wanted to see her on the team. And even with that, I read the Time magazine interview where she said that she wouldn't want a spot that she didn't earn, and she felt like it would take away from the women who have earned their way onto that team. And like I said, she's handled everything with a lot of class, a lot of maturity. She helped the Fever get back to the postseason for the first time in several years. You think about the backcourt that
was it Boston?
Yeah, was able to form, and that's a young team that's kind of going to be on the rise. The Indiana Fever. I think we all forgot that they had a new head coach, basically a new team outside of Leah Boston.
Oh, Leah Boston.
That was a team that was just literally didn't have the practice time and the time to even get to know each other until that Olympic break came around. And honestly, I'm looking forward to see what Caitlin Clark can do next season with a year under her belt. More time to rest, to put on a little more basketball weight, just to see how she'll be able to adjust to an actual full off season. Something that, and I noticed too that you see a lot of the WNBA players playing in this new 3-on-3 league.
Unrivaled.
Yeah, the unrivaled, and she's kind of the exception and decided to take the time off. That she probably needs. You think about this. She had her rookie lumps. The Pelicans, they were taking it to her, and the competitor her did not shy away from it. So
Anthony, let me just finish this off here to get to our next word real quickly, and I just wanted to add what I'm curious to see is how everyone's next step is, because again, like I said, this is one of the most stacked nominees list for this category in a long, long time. Like, you could think of other nominees like Louise Heel in this category, but honestly, none of them have the cachet of these 4 nominees, and they're going to be nominees that you're going to be thinking of all the time. Like, I'm talking about people like Louise Hill, Jared Verse, Jackson Churio, great nominees, but they're not anything close to what these 4 people have done. I can't wait to see how Caitlin Clark changes women's sports, not just women's basketball. And there's other reasons why it's been popular too, by the way. It's not just Caitlin. How Jada Daniels changes the culture in Washington, D.C., how Paul Steams becomes even better of a pitcher than he was in 2024. And really to see, and we've seen a little bit this year in what is technically Victor Wembanyama's second season now, how he transformed the Spurs and transforms his game. And as we see, that's gotten pretty high in the last few months. Okay, Anthony, we didn't plan this out. You, as a WWE fan, know that you don't always have to finish the story to have success. And as our nominees for head of the table for best coach had peaks this year in 2024, they're good, but they definitely have work to do. Not a lot of them have hit that mountaintop just yet. One of them has. We'll get to that in a second. We start with Dan Campbell of the Detroit Lions. Whether it's going for it, no matter the situation, the post-game speeches that I would pay admission to, or flipping his 3-13-1 record from 2021 to a bona fide Super Bowl contender in 2024, DC is a different breed of NFL leader. Dan Hurley, UConn basketball. Leader of men's college basketball's first repeat national champ, 17 years. The man who carries a portable washing machine with him during March Madness is putting UConn's competition through the spin cycle this last 2 seasons. Carlos Mendoza, New York Mets. To become a manager for the first time, he had to jump from the Yankees to the Mets. but he's put himself in Flushing history, taking a team that was supposed to rebuild in 2024 within 2 games of a World Series. And finally, Kevin O'Connell, Minnesota Vikings. He lost QB Kirk Cousins in the offseason to the Falcons, no problem. He lost QB of the future J.J. McCarthy to injury in August, no problem. His best option was journeyman Sam Darnold at QB. 14-2, again, no problem. The man hasn't even hit his 40th birthday yet. I hate him. And he's taking the Vikings to new heights. And the winner is, oh my God, it's Carlos Mendoza, New York Mets. A first-year Rookie of the Year manager wins head of the table, Jay.
Yeah, Rabbi, when you and I are going over the nominees for this award in pre-production, I remarked to you that it had been a while since I had seen so many worthy nominees for this award. I mean, think about some of the ones that didn't make our Final Four. Cheryl Reeve, who coached the USA Women to basketball gold in Paris. Steve Kerr, who did the same for the men. Joe Mazzulla, who coached the Celtics to the NBA's best record, brought home the franchise's 18th Larry O'Brien trophy. Sandy Brondello, who coached the Liberty to their first ever WNBA title. Aaron Boone, who managed the Yankees to their 41st American League pennant, and Dave Roberts, who managed the loaded Dodgers team to their 26th National League pennant and 8th World Series title. Hell, we actually forgot about Emma Hayes, who took over the U.S. women's national team practically at the 11th hour right before the Olympics and led them to gold. I think that Dan Campbell and Kevin O'Connell have done two of the best coaching jobs in the NFL this season and done it with very different styles. The Lions and the Vikings have been two of the best teams in the NFL all season, so it's only fitting that their matchup on the final Sunday of the regular season will decide both the NFC North, which has arguably been the best division in the NFL, and will send 3 teams to the playoffs, as well as decide the NFC's #1 overall seed. As for Dan Hurley, well, you know how highly I think of teams that win back-to-back championships in their respective sports. UConn cutting down the Nets in 2023 was impressive enough. They were the dominant team in one of the craziest March Madness tournaments ever. And I know I say that every year, but to get all the way back to the title game with practically a different team and win it all again would have given Hurley the award, in my humble opinion, if the Mets hadn't pulled off what they pulled off this season. And while I understand that there is some local bias at work here with Mets bench boss Carlos Mendoza winning this award, that does not detract from how he kept this team together through the rough patches. A 9-19 May saw them fall to 15.5 games behind the Phillies in the NL East, and they fell as far back as 17.5 games on June 11th, before recovering to go 40-27 after the All-Star break, highlighted by a 17-9 September run that got them into the playoffs. And we all know what happened there. The dramatic home runs that helped them get to the NLCS before bowing to the Dodgers. Mendoza was even-keeled throughout the highest of the highs and the lowest of lows that encompass one of the wildest seasons in Mets history. And with this franchise, that's saying something. That character trait, developed through all of his years alongside Aaron Boone in the Bronx, is one of the biggest reasons he was hired and one of the biggest reasons for the Mets' success. And that's why he's very much deserving of this award.
Anthony, you watched the Mets all year, and Carlos Mendoza brought an energy to this game.
Yeah, and get back to the nominees. Kevin O'Connell and Dan Campbell, the one thing that I would say that they have in common, and what all of these nominees have in common, is cultural change. And the culture they brought to these teams, as far as Dan Campbell, I think back to 2 years ago when they came into MetLife Stadium and beat the playoff-bound Giants, even though they were kind of playing out the string. You kind of saw there was something there with the trait. They finished 6-2 in the second half of the season. And then we saw that team's ascend to the NFC title game last year. And obviously, Kevin O'Connell and you mentioned Jay, they're going to be playing for the 1 seed to close out the season. And Dan Hurley, what he's done at UConn has just been anything short of phenomenal. The only thing that even threatened the UConn Huskies, to be honest, is Dan Hurley flirting with coaching the NBA, which for the Huskies thankfully did not happen. It was close, but it did not happen. But go back to May 11th, and I was at Citi Field where the Atlanta Braves were literally 1 out away from a combined no-hitter against a Met team that just literally looked like they were going nowhere. And they were saved by J.D. Martinez's 2-out home run, only to gain some kind of respect that they didn't get no hit by a hated rival. If you had told me that afternoon, walking out of Citi Field, that the Mets, who would literally go from bad to worse by the end of May, would be in the National League Championship Series, I think any Mets fan would have asked what kind of drugs you were taking, because we wouldn't have believed you there. But Carlos Mendoza, the job he's done, and everything, and I watched. I remember Alex Rodriguez said this during the Fox postgame show after the Mets knocked off the Phillies in the playoffs. The experience that Carlos Mendoza had going through the minors and even working as a bench coach for the Yankees, I think that has definitely helped him as far as relating to the players. And when things got from bad to worse, and they definitely did, the way he was able to keep this team together, and the fact that he let their personality shine. If it wasn't Francis Lindor come out to the Temptations, My Girl, or OMG, or even embracing the whole Grimace phenomenon that took over the last 2 months of the season, Carlos Mendoza let the players be themselves. Even letting Pete Alonso walk around with a lucky pumpkin during the postseason. But yeah, I mean, what Mendoza was able to do with this Met team that was projected to really go nowhere. This is supposed to be a rebuilding year. After the Mets crashed their boom in 2023, and to turn it around and to go on this postseason run that no one saw coming, which, by the way, started in Atlanta in a makeup doubleheader game, which the Mets had a route come from behind not once but twice in that first doubleheader to just get into the postseason. Carlos Mendoza absolutely, and this not a knock on any of these nominees. Even Don Staley, who has just been a beacon of women's basketball and women's sports and an advocate through and through. But Carlos Mendoza definitely earned this award just because of what he was able to do with a team that just has so many roller coaster rides during the 2024 season.
Absolutely. When I wrote the intro, it's very simple. We usually pick winners of all of their sports, and people are like, oh yeah, why don't you just pick the winners of the 4 major sports? We only had one champion this year, and that's Dan Hurley, and he's still 51 years old, so he's still got a long way to go in college basketball. So he could get an NBA job if he wants to later in life. That's why he probably didn't take the Laker job right now. And what you have is just young coaches who still have a lot of work to do. Kevin O'Connell being 39, having a chance to have the 1 seed and putting Sam Darnold and the Vikings on this huge run. Dan Campbell, same thing, 49 years old, having a chance to make this huge run this year and give Detroit possibly their first Super Bowl appearance, let alone Super Bowl. And you have the 45-year-old Carlos Mendoza, the winner of this thing, and he's still got a lot of work. I mean, he was a journeyman out there, but he's still young compared to a lot of the managers and coaches out there. It's going to be very interesting to see what the future holds for all of them, and this is what I think Coach of the Year really means. It's not easy to coach a champion, but it's hard to get yourself ready to coach a champion. And a lot of these players outside of Dan Hurley, who took the easy path seemingly to a back-to-back national title, has showed us that you need a lot of steps to make it into this game, and that's what they've done. So we'll see what happens going forward with them. All right. Now, our nominees for the biggest Grinch or jerk in sports. They are such jerks to us and everyone else that jerk is probably the kindest 4-letter word that they've been called in a long time.
Yep.
Let's check out the mean ones, Mr. Grinch. John Fisher, A's owner. He didn't want Oakland, and eventually, due to his bravado, Oakland didn't want him. Now, as the A's are now on their down part of their 175th rebuild, they will be doing that building in Sacramento. Yes, that Sacramento, for at least the next 2 seasons before heading to Las Vegas. The International Olympic Committee, after Jordan Childs appealed part of her floor exercise routine in order to get her an individual bronze, a bunch of people who may never know what it is to be an athlete said nope, and stripped her of the medal that she was originally awarded. Nothing says the Olympics like endless appeals. Woody Johnson, owner, New York Jets. This year's NFL owner who doesn't know how to do his job goes to, legally supposed to say, Ambassador Johnson. He wanted to reportedly get Aaron Rodgers benched after 4 games and denied a wide receiver Jerry Jeudy trade due to a bad Madden rating. And his sons seemingly have more powerful roles than their GM. And then finally, David Zaslav, the president of Warner Brothers and Discovery. It's rare to have an executive not directly associated with sports on this list, but the man who pretty much was directly responsible for getting the NBA off of Turner Networks will be known as a Grinch to all of those who have enjoyed the NBA on TNT for decades. Inside the NBA, yes, but inside the NBA does live on, thank God. And the winner is Sacramento's finest, A's owner John Fisher. Jay, you're going to talk about him a little bit more in our next segment, but can't go wrong or can't go right with these four nominees.
No, I mean, since I am going to talk about Fisher on our next one, I'm just going to kind of weigh in all the others, all of whom are very deserving of being finalists for this award. I'm not going to rip Alex Marullo as much as you guys probably will. It's only because I have bigger beefs with the others. Yes, absolutely terrible owner. Cheap, created a horrible atmosphere for the players, front office, and fan base alike. Getting a team booted from their arena in Glendale due to his mismanagement was the final straw. The fact that the NHL allowed him to retain the name and history of the Coyotes and gave him 5 years to build a new arena so he could resurrect the franchise, and in order for the NHL to avoid a protracted legal battle, reeks of extortion, especially since it seems like Marullo has already given up on the idea of doing so. I know Gary Bettman doesn't want to give up on the market, but in my humble opinion, hockey in the desert never really worked out the way Bettman hoped it would. And the Coyotes missing the Stanley Cup playoffs in 11 of the last 12 years and getting bounced in the first round of the only year they made it is proof that maybe it was time to move on. The early returns in Salt Lake City would seem to bear that out. As for the IOC stripping American gymnast Jordan Chiles of her bronze medal, I'm going to go back to what I said about it on our Olympic wrap-up show. Don't you just love it when something like this goes down and the supposed adults in the room, CAS, FIG, IOC, pick your acronym for who deserves the most blame for utterly mishandling this, do nothing, and they do nothing but point fingers at each other and cover their own asses behind the letter of the law. Chiles' coach got the appeal in on time in one interpretation, or seconds late in another. The only ones who suffer here are the individual athletes. Chiles, based on the degree of difficulty of her routine, deserved that bronze medal. It is the black eye on the Paris Games, no matter how you slice it. And the fact that the recommendation that all three gymnasts get a bronze, a Solomon-like fair solution, in my humble opinion, was shot down, makes these adults look even worse. I could go on quite the lengthy rant here, but we don't have the time. It just sucks that Chiles leaves these Olympics with the agony of defeat as the last taste in her mouth, as opposed to the thrill of victory. As for David Zaslav, the aforementioned CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, the parent company of TNT, is there a bigger combination of arrogance and stupidity? We don't have to have the NBA. Fracking kidding me? Uttering those words back in 2022 are the epitome of biting the hand that feeds you, and now it's come back to bite him in his ass. What? Did he think that despite what TNT in general and inside the NBA specifically has done to boost the profile of the association, that Adam Silver and the owners wouldn't take a comment like that personally? Did Zaslav honestly think that the NBA wouldn't look elsewhere once their media rights came up for negotiation? And then to cry foul and try and take legal action against the NBA when NBC took the final piece of the pie and left TNT out in the cold? Give me a break. How does this guy still even have a job? His pathetic attempts to walk back his comments rang hollow and seemed like the desperate last-ditch attempt of somebody who badly misread the room. Now, I'm not sure that it's funny, sad, or simply annoying as F that there is actually more to be said about Woody Johnson, especially since we thought we had said it all on our November 20th show when we ripped him to shreds in the wake of the firing of GM Joe Douglas. And then the Madden stuff came out. We knew that Johnson was the reason, the trade Douglas had in place to acquire Jerry Jeudy from the Broncos was squash, but we didn't know until right before Christmas that one of the reasons behind it, according to multiple league sources, was that Johnson felt Judy's player rating in Madden NFL wasn't high enough, which is apparently something he was told by his teenage sons, Brick and Jack. According to one Jets executive, quote, when we're discussing things, you'll hear Woody cite something that Brick or Jack read online that's being weighed equally against whatever opinion someone else in the department has. Now, there are some inside the organization who believe Johnson is consumed with the public perception of his franchise, sometimes at the expense of the on the field success. But when the Jets traded Zach Wilson to the Broncos last April, Denver asked Douglas to include the final pick in the draft, 257th overall. According to a source familiar with the negotiations, Johnson instructed Douglas to instead trade the 256th pick, with the Jets also own, so that New York could select Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick of the draft, who is annually celebrated upon his selection. Are you kidding me? Really? If any of this new stuff is even remotely true, it's just more sauce for the goose and further proof that Johnson is one of the worst and most incompetent owners in sports, let alone the NFL.
By the way, Alex Brullo was not nominated. Let me just remind you, that's the Coyotes owner that moved his team to Utah, for anybody out there. So just wanted to heads up to let everyone know about that. Anthony, so many jerks in sports. How do you follow that up, dude?
You know what?
You've got one more to go coming up.
Yeah, there are two nominees I do have to point out here that obviously was not a finalist, but Jorge Lopez. I would love to have a camera on him. Has he watched?
By the way, that's the Mets player team that basically calls him the worst team. Just want to make sure we know that.
Yeah, the Mets player who threw his glove into the stands and called the Mets the worst team in baseball. I would have loved to have a camera next to him to watch that worst team in baseball go to the National League Championship Series in spite of his incompetence back in May. And Aaron Rodgers. Okay, at this point, it's been everybody else's fault for the Jets' misfortunes except him. I've been to a couple of Jets games this season. It's definitely, Aaron Rodgers is definitely part of the problem for so many reasons. And can we pay Pat McAfee to stop being his official publicist? Yeah, we don't really need that. But yeah, get back to the finalists. Woody Johnson. I mean, look, we see bad owners all the time in New York in sports, and not even just here in New York. I mean, we have one in Maxwell Garden, FYI. But Woody Johnson kind of took the cake with the whole John Madden football thing. By the way, kids, how many of you woke up with Madden at the Christmas tree this year? Hopefully you got it. But I know for me, my Madden rate is at least an 84 at best. Wow. Maybe 83.
You would be in the 70s. I'm telling you right now.
Oh, I'm lying. I'm probably at
79, 78 79, 78 is fine for you.
I was a backup, so I can go that far. Anyway, the IOC shipping Jordan Childs, it just left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And especially when you tune in, you watch gymnastics, and to see kind of politics take away from an athlete and something they worked hard for 4 years of their lives. It's a black guy, regardless. And we've seen this in the Winter Olympics as well. I mean, it's never a good thing when your adults in the room act like babies, and the athletes are the ones who suffer the most from it. And I'll talk more about David Zassoff, obviously, later on in the show. John Fisher, I mean, he's always been a terrible owner anyway, but just from the lack of interest in trying to turn the Athletics into a winner, to any kind of trying to make that stadium that they used to play in less than a dump. We all heard about the stories about the sewage situation and backing up and everything that was going on in that Coliseum. And it's like, you can probably help with the plumbing a little bit. But yeah, you talk about Oakland Athletic. You talk about City of Oakland that has lost the Warriors, who moved to San Francisco. They've lost the Raiders to Vegas. And now you take away the last professional sports team they have, all because you couldn't hold the city ransom for a new stadium. It's typical Grinch-like mentality when it comes to a sports owner and trying to hemorrhage money for a new stadium from a community that has other priorities in mind with taxpayer dollars. And, of course, the usual, if you don't give us the money, we'll move. pretty much turned off the entire fan base, and we saw what happened with the attendance. I mean, you think about the Oakland Athletics organization, the rich history. By the way, the field was named after the obviously recently passed great Ricky Henderson. Um, it's just like all of that was just thrown out the window over the obvious greed that we're seeing too common in sports, and we talked about Alex, yeah, Alex Morello moving the Coyotes to Utah. I would have personally loved to see Hartford get a hockey team back, but that's just my personal opinion.
I have the sweatshirt, so it'll work out.
Yeah, but yeah, John Fisher deserves this Bridge of the Year award because of everything he's done, not just his organization the last several years, but also this fan base, and they deserve better than a letter on the way out that he left behind. That was just more like the final insult to a fan base that had tried to be loyal, that's tried to be supportive through some of the bleakest moments in this team's history over the last decade. Even showing up when the Yankees weren't actually competitive enough to make the postseason in recent years. So, like I said, he absolutely deserves this award.
Every year we do this, I think we have so many good nominees. It's just that they're just people who don't necessarily know sports, most of them, and just kind of do things that are either I look smart, I am smart, and I'm going to show you I'm the smartest person in the room, but I know nothing about sports. And the four nominees here greatly show that this year. So bravo. And obviously we'll talk more in just a minute or two. Speaking of, let's get into it. In 2024, we were disappointed by a lot of things. And while some of those things are probably still going to be disappointing into 2025, not all of them have to. It's time for some therapy. It's time to talk about what made us annoyed, pissed off, and just effing irate in the past year. I'm going to start off by saying this. A wise man once told me to embrace debate, and I'm about to tell that man to embrace leaving the table, not just the debate table and the table that you are currently sitting at. Even though we lost Skip Bayless from the world of linear media this year, something that I shedded a grand total of -5 tears over, we still have the likes of Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, Jeff Saturday, Cam Newton, Kendrick Perkins, Craig Carton, and Omarosa from The Apprentice on debate programming every day. Okay, I made the last one up, but would you be surprised if you saw a show with Omarosa from The Apprentice? With ESPN breaking the bank for Stephen A. Smith, allegedly, purportedly, to stay yelling at my screen for at least 10 to 12 hours a week, and in return, getting rid of people who made contributions to society and basketball and football that were valuable, like Zach Lowe and Robert Griffin III. You really know that ESPN isn't about informed opinions anymore, but the you take one side, I'll take the other side arguments. You think Josh Allen is the MVP? I'll say Lamar Jackson is the MVP. And I dropped a certain card while doing it. You say LeBron James is the best of all time with some stats to back him up. I'll say Michael Jordan is the best of all time with different stats to back him up. If only here someone was part of the problem of that, for an example. Pointing to him, he's wearing a goofy shirt right now. Anyway, if you say Wayne Gretzky is the greatest goal scorer of all time, I'll say Alexander. Oh, what am I kidding? ESPN and other outlets don't talk about hockey. You thought that was a legitimate example? Stop it. Now, there will never be a solution on this. We've officially reached a point of no return. And this is how we get ahead. Clicks. It's sort of contradictory to basically blame analysts' opinions on podcasts while we're doing a podcast ourselves right now. But all I want to say is this. I hate to say these 4 words on any form of media, but do your own research. Whatever you have as an opinion isn't right or wrong. We don't have to debate the other side if we want to. Maybe for entertainment purposes I will, but we might not have to. Except with Anthony, when you two and Jay mimic each other, stop it. Don't do that anymore. Anyway, that makes me sick. And don't worry, Anthony. I'm going to throw it to you next. But you and I will still be part of the Jordan Haters Club for life. I promise you that. I'll make sure that you dude, especially on LeBron's 40th birthday today. Why don't you go next?
Yeah, happy birthday, the greatest player of all time,
Oh
LeBron
God,
James.
just go
Say that.
next. Go
Like,
next.
suck on that, you Jordan lovers.
Go
Anyway,
next.
all right. The thing that annoyed me the most is not just that the NBA, the TNT Turner Sports is losing the NBA after being pretty much a central part of the league's growth for the last 30 some odd years, going back to 1988-89 season. Even further back, we go back to the NBA being covered by TBS. Um, it's the way that it happened. And David Zaslav, uh, in 2022, and Jay, you mentioned it earlier, said that we didn't need the NBA. Well, if you didn't need the NBA, why wait to the 11th hour to not only be outbid by NBC, Comcast, and Amazon, who've been on NBA packages respectively, but then cry foul you try to match said packages, and the NBA decided to stick with Amazon's package, and you decide to file a lawsuit. The whole smug arrogance of the situation when you had a 2-year window to establish relationships with the league, to establish even talks of an extension early on, right away, and obviously David Zaslav is mucked up a lot of things as far as Warner Brothers Discovery. Not just basketball, is canceling movies that were actually completed, releasing movies that bombed in the box office. There's been a lot of things. There's been a lot of things going wrong with Warner Brothers Discovery under his watch. But the losing the NBA, which was such a big part of not just viewership for TNT, but also cable carriage deals as well. So that is also a big blow to his reputation. By the way, I think it kind of sucks that sometimes TNT has been forced to show him on camera when he's appeared at certain games during the regular season. But when you think about the whole thing, it's like, how did you lose the NBA? It basically comes down to, it wasn't the case that it was outbid, it was too much money, a la NBC back in 2002. This was a case of pure arrogance and probably being overly confident that no one was going to swoop in last minute, even though there have been reports for months that NBC and Amazon was looking to get into the NBA business, and expected to make massive offers. So David Zaslav, I don't know how he still has a job at this point, but it'd be interesting to see now. One of our Discovery, nice good fourth quarter earnings. I do read the Wall Street Journal from time to time. Good for you. Let's see a year from now when the only sports thing you got going on a week-to-week basis is All Elite Wrestling, which has become a bit of a sinking ship the last few months.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. I should really vet you before you do this.
Yeah, but the whole thing, the whole dropping the ball on TNT. You think about the personalities of guys, not just inside the NBA, which will be continuing to ESPN next year, but you think about giving us commentators like Kevin Harlan and introducing a lot of people to Shell Miller back in the day, who weren't familiar with her during her basketball days, and of course. I would be kind of losing it if I didn't bring up the great Craig Sager, who was a big part of TNT's coverage. So yeah, really dropped the ball on this whole thing.
Jay, as we have people waiting for our next few segments, talk about John Fisher. We've been waiting for this one.
Yeah. Oh man, let me tell you, I'm gonna need a minute on this one, Rabbi. I'll try and make it quick so you know we have people waiting. What John Fisher has done to A's fans in the city of Oakland is a flat out travesty. He's guilty of conduct unbecoming an owner of a professional sports team, and Rob Manfred is guilty of dereliction of duty as Major League Baseball commissioner by aiding and abetting this travesty because he is so enamored of wanting an MLB presence in Las Vegas. He allowed Fisher to pull this crap with every proposal the city of Oakland made in a 100% good faith effort to keep the team there. Here's a little reminder of his crimes. He refused to spend money, and he has plenty, a fortune of $2.6 billion according to Forbes. That refusal put a major league level his refusal to put a major league level product on the field was a slap in the face to a fan base that has bled green and gold since the A's came to the left coast in 1968. Over the last decade, Fisher averaged baseball's 26th highest payroll, and the team only won one playoff game. It shouldn't be a surprise that the fan base turned away. They're not stupid. When the team is good, they show up. When ownership orders yet another fire sale of the roster, they don't. Fisher can blame the lack of fan turnout and the lack of options given him by the city of Oakland all he wants as the reasons for him relocating the fan base from the 10th largest media market to the 40th. But we all know that's just, forgive my Bronx here, bullshit. His letter to the fans at the end of this September, in which he reiterated his long-standing position that the franchise did its best to stay in Oakland, is either the product of a seriously delusional mind or flat out bullshit. There's that word again. So only someone as arrogant as Fisher would believe that folks would actually swallow something like that. The part of the letter that said, quote, "Though I wish I could speak to each one of you individually, I can tell you this from the heart. We tried. Staying in Oakland was our goal. It was our mission, and we failed to achieve it. And for that, I am genuinely sorry." That rings about as fake and as hollow as possible, and I'm not the only one who thinks that Fisher's words and actions, lack thereof, regarding his attempts to keep the franchise in Oakland are as empty as the Coliseum was this season. Billy Joel Armstrong, the lead singer of the band Green Day, and an Oakland native, along with being a really big A's fan, spent much of the summer voicing his displeasure at the team's looming exodus from Oakland. During a show at Oracle Park late in September, less than a week before the A's played their final game in Oakland, Armstrong launched into an expletive-filled rant, expressing his displeasure with team owner John Fisher and the franchise's future home, Las Vegas. I'll keep it PG-13 for the kids. Quote, "We don't take no shite from people like John effing Fisher, who sold out the Oakland A's to Las effing Vegas. I effing hate Las Vegas. It's the worst shite hole in America." Now, I'm not anywhere close to being an Oakland A's fan, but I'm as angry and pissed off for them as any true baseball fan would and should be. My anger over this travesty had almost evaded, pushed to the back of my mind with the baseball season long in my rear view. And then Ricky Henderson, one of Oakland's favorite sons and one of the best to ever wear the green and gold, passed away right before Christmas, and all of my rage at what Fisher has done came bubbling back to the surface. It reminded me of something that Marcus Thompson II, senior consultant for the Bay Area for The Athletic, wrote back at the end of September that pretty much sums it all up. Here's the passage from his piece. "John Fisher has been a treacherous steward of one of the gem franchises of sports. Everything about the A's has crumbled under his leadership. Winning, fandom, reputation. Major League Baseball forfeited its right to tug at these heartstrings one last time. They've allowed all of this to happen, preferring frugality and profit margins over culture and history. And that's why this travesty is the thing that pissed me off most in sports in the calendar year of 2024.
It's a long list for Jay, so that's always the one that gets him, the most. So we're going to bring in other people now over here. Let's bring in two of our favorite people who actually did help us with the voting this year. We have Sean Roman, and eventually to be connected to audio, Mr. Pedro Hazel Jr. I'll try to work on those audio issues. Hey, Pedro, how you doing?
Bye-bye.
Pedro!
And Sean, how are you doing?
Hey.
Happy holidays, guys.
Steve Ferguson says hi, by the way.
Yes, sorry we could not get Steve Ferguson here tonight. He has to be working tomorrow. So Pedro is one of the founding fathers of this show, which started almost 2 decades ago. And Sean is here for the sole purpose of being the contrarian of the show and to piss off Jay. I needed a mercenary on tonight's show.
Always a pleasure, Sean.
Hey, Sean, how are you, by the way?
We all have to have a role.
Everyone has to have a role.
Yours to perfection, my man.
All right. I'm glad the whole table is here. It's full because I'm going to be the chef tonight and I'm going to prepare you a 3-course menu of one of our specialties. It's the what the fuck platter. We will examine this category tonight in 3 parts, starting with the what the fuck that made you say, whoa, I can't believe it. This is the good WTF for 2024.
Sounds very tasty.
It is tasty. This is the good tasty. This is the Michelin star stuff. Whether it be the OT Super Bowl win to start 2024, the multiple last play victories during the year, blocked field goals at the end of the game, bad snaps by the opponent at the end of the game, or the doink for the division, the Kansas City Chiefs year of 2024 is on this list for all of those reasons. Choose your own adventure. 92 catches, 14 TDs, 4 interceptions. Colorado Buffalo's positionless football star Travis Hunter became the first two-way player of the Heisman in 27 years and acted like his coach Deion Sanders on the field. I would say acting like the son that Deion never had, but his son is literally taking the snaps at QB and is probably going to be #1 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
I think our third nominee, Shohei Ohtani, lived up to his offseason contract with baseball's first ever 50-50 season. 54 homers and 59 stolen bases. And lest we forget how we got to that milestone on September 19th. 6 for 6, 10 RBIs, 3 homers, 2 stolen bases. That's a WTF on its own, kids. Ohtani took a gamble with the Dodgers and won. And finally, the new Captain America of baseball, Steph Curry. In his first and possibly only Olympics, his numbers in the Olympic semis and finals for the red, white, and blue are superhero-like. 17 of 26 from 3, 60 points overall, keeping Serbia and France saying WTF or Sacre Bleu, if it's France, as the hardest difficulty threes kept going in. And the winner is, the refs did not have a thing to do with it. I swear to God, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Sean and Pedro will let you get in a moment for Jay. The Chiefs are the Chiefs, and despite being right now at the ridiculous record of 15-1, even a 2-time Super Bowl champion defending can make you say what the fuck sometimes.
Without a doubt. I think individual players doing something, anything to elicit the famous line from the late, great Jack Buck will always have a place on the nominees list for this award. And Travis Hunter winning the Heisman by being among the best at both wide receiver and cornerback in college football this year. Shohei Ohtani putting up MLB's first 50-50, 50 home run, 50 stolen base season and leading the Dodgers to a World Series title is worthy. And Steph Curry giving us another epic showcase of his skills at the Paris Olympics to bring home the gold for USA men's basketball. These are all just the latest proof of that. And they are the most deserving of being finalists for this award. But of the 16 total nominees, 9, including our winner, are teams. 1 is a game. And that, to me, is what this award is really about. And when a team keeps doing something that should not be sustainable, yet they keep doing it week after week after week, well, that, to me, is the epitome of what our good WTF award is for. The Chiefs are looking to become the first team in the NFL to three-peat as Super Bowl champs. And if you've been watching from afar, just checking the standings, you'd think their 15-1 record heading into the final Sunday of the regular season, with the AFC West and the AFC's #1 overall seed long clinched, would indicate a team, headlined by head coach Andy Reid, quarterback Patrick Mahomes, tight end Travis Kelce, and Steve Spagnuolo's top 10 defense had run roughshod over the NFL this season. That would not be further from the truth. The 2024 edition of the Chiefs are not the high-powered, highlight reel producing team we've come to expect. In fact, this team has been winning by, as I said in our midseason report, a combination of smoke and mirrors and hook by crook with a side order of Mahomes magic. And it's only a side order because no one would look at his numbers and say they're Mahomes-like. Especially, 11 of their 15 wins have been by a single possession, 7 by less than a touchdown. And they haven't scored more than 30 points in any game this season. In fact, they've only hit 30 twice. First on a touchdown in overtime over Tampa Bay, and the second to barely escape on the road at Carolina. Now, Mahomes has had only 2 300-yard passing games this season and only 4 games where his passer rating is topped 100 and his yards per attempt top 8. 93.5 is his passer rating, and that's the second lowest of his career. His 6.8 yards per attempt is a career low, as is his 245.5 passing yards per game. And yet every week, he seems to make the right play at the right time to secure the win for the Chiefs. Hasn't mattered how he or the team have started. Come the fourth quarter, he invariably turns into the NFL's version of Mariano Rivera. The Chiefs win over the Steelers on Christmas Day, which completed a 3-game all wins in 11-day stretch. It was pretty much the first time all season that we've seen Mahomes, and by extension, the Chiefs, be Mahomes, the version of Mahomes and the Chiefs we're used to. 29-38, 76.3% completion, season high 321 yards in the air, 8.4 yards per pass, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 127.1 passer rating. The Chiefs have secured the number 1 seed for the 4th times in the Reid Mahomes era, 2018, 2022, and now 2024. And they're 7-0 against the Texans, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Chargers, Broncos, and Bengals this season. There are 6 potential divisional round playoff opponents, depending on how things shake out. If the team we saw against Pittsburgh is the version the rest of the AFC will have to go through, KC is expected to rest most of their starters the last week of the regular season, then my pick of them potentially three-peating back in September may not be so outrageous, and how they'll have gotten to this point will be the epitome of what this award is all about.
Sean, you're going to go next, and I can only imagine. I just love that snowman with Pillsbury Doughboy that I can currently see right now on the tree. A lot of good nominees over here, and I think the Chiefs do represent it all, but I'm sure you have some out there nominees as well. You are muted.
I got to ask, does Jay go on forever like this with every award?
Some yes, some no. And sometimes, Sean, I do it just to annoy the hell out of you.
No comment, by the way.
One thing, Jay, with your analysis, I'd like to point out, I'd like you to remember that the Green Bay Packers have three-peated twice, 1920, 30, and 31.
In the Super Bowl era.
Yeah, Super Bowl. It's still matters.
I am aware that prior to the Super Bowl, the Packers did that.
And they're the only ones. I mean, the Bears haven't done that. None of the other teams. So
the Otto Graham Cleveland Browns never pulled that off in their day.
I'd have to look it up. I would say most twice in a row. The only ones I noticed 3 in a row twice were the Packers. But we could look up Otto Graham and the Browns while I move on to my I was looking for something really special to talk about and what happened and that stood out and just sort of hit you out of nowhere. And you guys did discuss it in narrowing these downs. It was that in the Olympics, that long distance running, where Cole Hocker came out of nowhere, and it's the only gold medal he ever won, and it's the 1,500-meter event. And not being into long distance running or following it all that much, I really don't know the significance of it in terms of its endurance and its idiosyncrasy. But it was funny the way they built it up because, given the time differences, you only see it later. And if it's put in prime time, something very special happened, at least in the old days. And now it's like you get some type of text or notification and then it kind of gives it away. But they really played it up where they had the Norwegian Jakob Ingebrigtsen and the guy from Scotland. What was his name? Kerr.
Yeah.
And they were going back and forth. And, in order to make running interesting, sometimes you have to have some sort of rivalry, a back and forth. Like, remember the movie Chariots of Fire in the previous Paris Olympics? It was Eric Liddell. And then it was the other guy the movie was made about. I forget his name right now, but there was a great rivalry between those two that is, it's 100 years later, we're still talking about it. And they made a best picture about it. So it was those two with this back and forth because the Norwegian had won the gold the last time around. He wound up winning the 5,000, but he was expected to win this 1,500 meters, and he led most of the race. And then his rival from Scotland had he had tried so hard. He won the bronze in Tokyo, and he's back to take this, and he talked himself up, and he was in the race and was back and forth, and they get to the bell lap, and you see the Americans 4, 5, and 6, and Cole was number 5, and Ingebrigtsen was number 1, and Kerr was number 3, and then they go back and forth at the end between each other, and the Norwegian winds up out of the medals. The American and Kerr are back and forth, and just at the end, Cole Hocker pulls away for what I thought was the most magnificent performance, and just really made me open my eyes and jaw drop. That's why that won this award for me.
It's I can already hear, by the way, the words "It's Cole Hocker" immediately from who's announcing it. So
Sean, I looked it up, and I'm going to have to, do a mea culpa here. The Cleveland Browns, who, when it were originated in the All-American Football Conference,
Right.
1946 was the first year of that league. It only lasted 4 years, 47, 48, 49. The Browns were the champion each of those 4 years, and in 1950, their first year in the NFL, they won the NFL title. So that's technically 5 straight. So got to give it to them.
We've really hit a different way here. Pedro, talk about the Chiefs.
Well, I mean, the Chiefs, I mean, it just seems uh, Patrick Mahomes just seems to touch everything he does. It's like every time he throws, it just seems like he finds a way to win. He finds a way to get the receivers or the running back. He always finds it's like he's just that special quarterback. You can't somebody like him. It's not hardly like any quarterback I've ever seen in recent years. I mean, it's like he always I just he has a lot of luck on his side. It's just one of and of course he has Travis Kelce, he has Andy Reid, but it's
But what's
just
funny, Pedro, is not all of the time do you see them all at their best, especially Kelsey. It seems like he can either go for 2 catches a game or 8 catches a game. That's just the way it seemingly has been this year.
yeah. I mean, it's just I guess it points to the Kansas City Chiefs of well balanced team, running backs, receivers. It's like it's not just one person, it's the whole team. It's one of the few times that you really see the whole team all get together. Somebody does one part, another person does another part. It's like it's not one dominant factor, not even Mahomes. It's just the whole team together. It's kind of like an ensemble cast.
The heart of a champion, Pedro. It definitely is. We'll call in the Goofy movie delegation into the chat. A lot of ways you can go here, but it seems like the Chiefs is the safest way to go, especially with what you've seen so far. Even going back to the overtime game, by the way, which was technically in 2024.
Yeah, the Chiefs may be the first 15-win team to be underdogs going into the playoffs because it's just a case of how are they doing this. They've won games in a variety of ways. A blocked field goal, a miscue by Oakland late in the game several weeks ago. I mean, hey, look, if you're going to be good, and we've seen the teams that won championships, sometimes it's better to be lucky. And the Chiefs, they're not going to shy away from the fact that they've been lucky on many occasions, but they'll take the wins one way or another. There was no such thing as style points in pro sports. I think you sometimes sit the sports talk cold take hot take world kind of dictate.
No, cold take is the right way to say it. I would
take,
actually say perfectly fine.
Kind of dictate how a team should win. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day as long as you win. But there are two nominees on this list that really did catch my eye. First off, the women's dominance in the 4x400 relay in the Olympics. When you think about how the women's track team just literally left everyone in the dust. It was Alexis Holmes, Shamil Little, Gabby Thomas, and Sydney McLaughlin-Laverne. By the time Laverne got her baton to run her leg, by the way, all the women ran their leg under 50 seconds. That's just how dominant that race was for Team USA. The race was over. By the time we got to the last leg, there was not an opposing runner in sight. It was just unbelievable to see the women dominate the event in such a fashion that I don't think any of us have seen in a long time. But another considerable mention I have to talk about is Minnesota coming back from 20 down against the defending champions in the Game 7 on the road. Keep in mind, that whole comeback started innocently with a Rudy Gobert dunk, and they're down by 17. But before you know it, I know I personally toned away from that game because I was still hurt from the Knicks losing early in that afternoon in the Game 7. Only to tone back about 20 minutes later and to see that was a 5-point game all of a sudden. And by the time Anthony Edwards hits a 3-pointer to stretch the lead to the Timberwolves to 10, and you look at the way the Nuggets have the Denver Nuggets now this season, and like that's a team that had just still not recovered from blowing that big lead at home with a chance to continue their defensive championship on the line. So those are two nominees that kind of stood out absolutely. But the Kansas City Chiefs become an escape artist between last season and this year. Definitely took this award because it's like the old scene from Breaking Bad. They can't keep getting away with this, and we're still trying to figure out just how the hell from week to week are they doing this? Is it the postseason when the luck finally runs out, or are we going to see more Mahomes magic in Arrowhead? Remember, the Super Bowl goes through Kansas City this year. So anybody that's going to knock them off has got to go into Arrowhead and do it.
I want to say one nominee to make this discussion go 45 minutes, but I do want to talk about Golden State. I do want to talk about Steph Curry and see what he did during the Olympics in those semifinal and finals. It's going to be his only Olympics, most likely. He's pretty much said so. Watching his display of three-point shooting, especially at the end of that France game where he was hitting Olympic shots from three that I didn't even know were legally possible by FIBA. They were so good, and watching a thing that you'll never ever see again. I know obviously the dream team happens every year. They've won this so many times, but just to see somebody of Steph Curry's shot selection and brilliance hitting everything in sight is just a good what the fuck for me, and be like, that's our player in a basketball war.
He's the king of the 3-pointers.
It is the king of the 3-pointers, but you never saw it on an international level, and so the whole world got to see it on an international level. It was just, for me, it was special.
But in France, he's called the devil. Keep that in mind.
Le devil. All right, let's move on. Unfortunately, not all the dishes on the WTF menu can be Michelin star worthy. In fact, these wouldn't even be White Castle worthy. Here's the negative side of the coin in the, oh no, I can't believe this happened, the BAD WTF. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson on Netflix. Whether it be buffering on Netflix's first ever live sporting event, the existence of Jake Paul, and the fact that we saw the fighting skills in the bare ass of 58-year-old Mike Tyson, the 4-month delay that we had for this match was not worth the wait. Breakdancer Raygun at the 2024 Olympics. Think what you want of this. It's our list. Email me. I don't care. But with the debuting discipline in Paris, the world's best breakdancers were upstaged social media-wise from Australia's sideshow. And while she was one of Halloween's best costumes, and probably for years to come, the media uproar ended her career in breakdancing. She is a teacher, though. So, Ohio State football. Sorry, Sean. Losers to Michigan again. Sorry, Sean. For the 4th straight year, a 10-1 Ohio State team going in should not lose to a 6-5 Michigan team at home, but they did. They should not brawl afterwards, with Pepper State breaking it up after a flag planting, but it did. The Chicago White Sox record for baseball futility, 41-121. We could have seemingly seen this season coming as the season was going on. A shame for all of you, unless you were the previous futility owners in the 1962 expansion, 120-loss New York Mets. Really a great season for the Mets when you think about it. Finally, the Detroit Lions go from a 17-point halftime lead to a heartbreaking NFC Championship loss to the San Francisco 49ers. Coach of the Year nominees Dan Campbell's gambling took away a possible first Super Bowl for the Lions. Hopefully, the best is yet to come. And Jay, the winner/loser is the Chicago White Sox. Sox in 2024. One of the worst teams in baseball history, and by record, the worst team in baseball history, Jay.
Yeah, and I'm going to get into a little history here, and I know that Sean and Pedro will appreciate this. When it comes to this award, I'm always going to lean towards the "are you effing kidding me" things that happen on the actual field of play. So the buffering issues for Netflix during the farce that was Paul versus Tyson, and the stuff that went down with Raygun and breakdancing at the Olympics don't really resonate with me. No disrespect intended to either of those finalists. Thus the Lion. So It's things like the Lions blowing their 17-point lead against the Niners in the NFC title game, keeping them from finishing one of the best stories in the NFL with a trip to the Super Bowl. And 21-point favorite Ohio State losing to Michigan for the 4th straight season, along with the flag planting that led to the post-game melee that required law enforcement officers to use pepper spray in order to get things under control, are the type of things that I feel best epitomize this award, which is why next to Caitlin Clark winning our Rookie of the Year award, the Chicago White Sox breaking the record for baseball futility that I never thought I'd see broken makes this the second most no-brainer Captain Obvious choice of all no-brainer Captain Obvious choices for an award winner. And since y'all know that I'm a numbers guy, in my role as OTSL's resident stat king, especially when it comes to baseball, I'm going to run the numbers on the White Sox one last time with a little help from Jason Stark of The Athletic. Y'all will remember, Pedro will more personally than the rest of us, Casey Stengel's illustrious 62 Mets and their 40-20 record, long owning the gold standard for baseball futility until the White Sox. Think about this. The White Sox somehow won 5 of their last 6 and still managed to go 41-121. The Phillies won their 41st game on May 31st. The White Sox won their 41st on the last day of the season, 121 days later. 41 is a common number for the White Sox. They finished 41 games out of next to last place. The Twins, who were the next closest team in the AL Central to Chicago, finished 41 games ahead of them. And there was never a day at any point in the season where the White Sox were ahead of any team in their own division. The 62 Mets only finished 18 games out of next to last. The 119-loss Tigers from 03 finished only 20 games out of next to last. The worst team ever in the history of baseball, the 134-loss 1899 Cleveland Spiders, only finished 35 games out of next to last. No team in the modern era had ever even finished 40 games out of next to last. The White Sox were already 38 out of next to last before they even made it to September. Now, speaking of September, if you looked at the standings on the 22nd of the month with a week to go in the season, you'd have seen that the White Sox were a mind-boggling 84 games under 500 at 36-120. Only 3 teams in baseball history, and none since 1900, have reached 84 games under 500. The 1899 Spiders, the 1890 Pittsburgh Alleghenies, and the 1889 Louisville Colonels at exactly 84 under. Then there's this. Y'all remember the 1988 Orioles, who lost their first 21 games of the season and then spent the next 3.5 decades owning that record of futility? Well, the White Sox joined that club, adding a 21-game losing streak of their own from July 10 to August 5. During that streak, 197 different pitchers won a game for the other 29 teams in the time where the White Sox were winning 0. And as the trade deadline was happening during that losing streak, 171 players got traded, according to the Baseball Reference transactions page. I will end this litany of White Sox futility with these other tidbits, also courtesy of Mr. Stark. The White Sox started the season by going 0-14 on games played on a Monday. They were also 66 games under 500 the other 6 days of the week. They had a streak in the second half of the season where they went 1-27 at home. You want some context? The Phillies only lost 26 games at home the entire season. The White Sox lost 27 on the South Side in just 8 weeks. The Rangers won more games at Guaranteed Rate Field. I know Anthony loves that name. In the 24 hours, 3, between August 28th and 29th, and the White Sox had won in the previous 61 days and 13,660 hours, 2. The White Sox were eliminated from any kind of playoff race on August 17th, the 124th game of the season. The White Sox lost more games before the end of August, 106, than Michael Jordan's Bulls lost in their 6 championship seasons combined, 104. I know Anthony appreciates that as well. And finally, the White Sox went more than 4 months, from May 11 to September 15, without winning a series against a team from their own league. Like I said, this is the second most no-brainer Captain Obvious choice of all no-brainer Captain Obvious choices for an award winner.
Pedro, I didn't think I would have the spiders and alligators on my bingo card tonight.
Well,
but we sure did.
At least the Mets are off the hook somewhat.
What is
the White Sox did
well.
win as far as percentage. The White Sox did win as far as percentage, 2.253. But at least they lost more games than the 62 Mets. We'll put it that way.
Well, congratulations, actually.
Thank you. I know. And the other thing, it's like when and being a Mets fan, you've seen it all, been there, good, bad, mediocre, and the downright ugly. I've seen some ugly seasons, not like the 62 Mets were a little before my time, but you've seen if you're a Mets fan, you've seen everything. Some of the other some of the other some of the other some of the other candidates that some of the other that stood
Pedro, do you
out.
want me to get back to you? Are you still good? Do you want me to get back to you on this one or no?
Yeah, go back.
All
Yeah.
right, Sean, you're a baseball historian. Does this kind of really interest you? I feel like this is something that just from April on, you kind of saw the train just going off the rails.
I always look at baseball as this. Every team basically wins 60 games. Every team loses 60 games, and it's what you do with that other 40, 42 games.
Yes, it's a great point.
There are some outliers, and this was the outlier of outliers.
Yes, that's always the case. There are 40 games you're never going to win, 40 games or something you're going to lose, and the rest can go either way.
I call this award, I call it the Blow My Mind Award. I mean, you guys got a lot more older since leaving MNN. That's your prerogative. But what blew my mind in a bad way? And it came to me when we were doing the pre-production meeting. And this was one of the top 3 greatest errors in World Series history. Aaron Judge, great competitor, wonderful person, drops a fly ball that any high school kid, maybe even little league kid, is expected to catch. If this was game 6 or 7, that error would be the headline of his obituary. It would be his epitaph. That it happened in game 5, it was definitely the greatest momentum killer I remember all year of an individual play. Because 1 out, leading 5-0, you gotta pay enough attention as a professional to make that play and not let it pop out of your glove. I mean, there's a lot to be said here. Psychologically, is this just the Yankees paying it back after winning the most championships in all of sports and being on the right end of so many things over the years? It's just boggling because there's only 2 other errors in World Series history I could consider this right along with. And that is, you'll obviously say Bill Buckner's error.
Yes.
Happened in game 6. We all seen it. It went through his leg. I mean, even if Buckner catches that ball, he's going to have a tough time running to first to catch Mookie Wilson. And the other one, the other great error in World Series history goes back to, I believe it was 1912 for the New York Baseball Giants. It was a player named Fred Snodgrass.
Yeah.
They were playing, I believe it was the Boston Braves, the 8th game of the World Series.
Back then it was best of 9.
Yeah, well, actually, I think it may have been best of 9, but what happened was the game before ended in a tie, so they had to go to 8, and I think it only had to go to 8, but it could have went to 9. So
I think ties only counted on the other side. By the way, we were really, really giving that audience demo a huge up this weekend going with this. So I hope they know how to use Zoom.
Snodgrass, he muffed a similar play in center field, and then he made an amazing play. History writes. And when he died years later, that's the line that the New York Times included in, the headline of his obit. Famous for muffing that play in center. And just to me, I don't remember a momentum killer and an error as bad that I was actually able to visualize. Because I put it above Buckner's because I don't know if Buckner's catching Mookie at first if he gets that ground ball.
I don't think he is either. Pedro, I was going to go back to you for a second. You have anything else to add here?
One of the candidates that kind of it stood out was Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Dolphins playing 4 below 0 temperatures.
Yes.
That reminded me of this game, and I'm sure you're probably going to remember. Well, some of you. It reminds me of the NFC Championship game, 1982 at Cincinnati, Ohio.
An NFC Championship game between the Bengals and the
Chargers.
San Diego Chargers.
Yeah, the Freezer Bowl. The Freezer Bowl.
Yeah. Anyway, the temperature was like 10 below and the wind chill factor was like 60 below. I mean, it was like the ball was like, I mean, the Chargers were like, what was going on? I mean, the ball was as hard as as hard as a rock, and it just kept slipping away, just like the Chargers' chances of getting into the Super Bowl. But it was such a wild game. I mean, it's right up there also with the ice ball in 1967 with the Green Bay Packers. That kind of like brought to mind those games. That kind of remind me a little bit of that.
Anthony, before we get to a special roundtable here, some of these nominees for me, it's a very interesting list when you look at it.
It is interesting. I mean, you think about Bryce Young and how the Carolina Panthers handled that situation, bench him really after a couple of games, and obviously we've seen him play very well down the stretch. You talk about the retirements of Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, kind of like a change of the guard and coaching. Tyreek Hill being detained before the season opener and being captured and posted on social media. But I'm going to quote a famous baseball line that I know Jay and Sean is going to love. Say it ain't so, Joe. Just say it ain't so.
Well done.
The White Sox finished 45 games out of the top wild card spot. By August 8th, they were 28-89 on the season. The first team since the 2021 Baltimore Orioles to have separate losing streaks of 14 games in a row. I was in Las Vegas during one of those losing streaks, and I actually won $20 because I betted that the losing streak was going to continue for a couple of nights. So good luck. So thank you for me.
And he doesn't win money often, kids.
No, I do not. But here's the thing. When you have a level, by the way, the city of Chicago as a whole for 2024 has been a disaster. In every major sport, they have been downright bad. But the Chicago White Sox just took bad to a laughable level to which we didn't think would ever happen in this era of baseball. The only alibi the Mets have for 62 is the fact that they were an expansion team. They were expected to be bad. The White Sox being this dreadful to the point where they're so laughable that they make the Cubs look good, who plays on the north side and was equally bad. This says everything you need to know about this team. By the way, they fired their manager, and it was just even worse. They could have fired the whole organization. Look, Jerry Weinstock, you want to sell a team, sell this one. Just do anything. White Sox, you wouldn't even think that this team won a championship in 2005, as recent as 2005. Oh. And they've been so bad in recent years. By the way, they've changed the stadium name like 3 or 4 different times. That was called Wright Field. At this point, the White Sox just I'll go pay to see a minor league team before I pay to see this team take the field for 9 innings anytime soon.
Gotta go by opponent in that case. But
well, an interesting debate is, you say could a great college team beat the Giants or Jets? Could a college or AAA team? How many games are they going to beat that?
But see, the minor league team is actually possibly, literally definition-wise, a lower level. That's the problem in that situation. The college team could already be as good. So that is a very good argument, though. I do have another discussion, though, and that's what we're talking about right now. Based around the Christmas Day football games that just happened on Netflix, no buffering, shocker, there had been a lot of talk about the NBA's declining ratings during the year up to that point. They improved a lot just based on the 5 games on Christmas Day. Every one of them improved up from what they were in 2023. And at the end of their win against the Warriors in a close game, because all Lakers-Warriors games have to go down to the final possession by law, LeBron said, "Christmas is our day." LeBron, the NFL can take any day they want right now. They are king. But football, American, college, and pro, that's the number 1 sport in America. Jay, what's number 2?
It's funny. It's like, I remember when you and I were like trying to figure out what we wanted to go with here. And it was a very interesting thought exercise for me. And it took me a while to kind of figure out where I came down on this. But, and I'm not sure there really is a definitive answer, especially since, we kind of combined the NFL and college football into one sport. Something that I'm not necessarily sure I agree with. They may use a similar looking ball and have similar rules, but there's a distinct difference between the game that's played by the 32 NFL teams and the one played by the 134 Division I college football teams. The case could be made that basketball, if you combine the NBA, the WNBA, and both men's and women's college basketball in the same way we did for football, is the second most popular sport, especially with the ridiculous gains in attendance and viewership made by the WNBA and women's college basketball, due in no small part to the Caitlin Clark effect. The NBA could use a boost in ratings, but when there is no dominant team either to root for or against, something that brings out the casual fan, especially when the playoffs begin, we had during the height of the LeBron, Steph, KD generation, it doesn't help that said generation is getting on in years, though what they showed us during the last Olympics did remind us of those halcyon days of yore. As much as Adam Silver may not want another dynasty like the one we had earlier in the century with those Warriors, parity, 6 different Larry O'Brien Trophy winners in the last 6 seasons, it's dynasties, not parity, that do help drive fan interest. That said, the in-season tournament seems to have sparked the interest that Silver wanted. Viewership for the now Emirates NBA Cup games on ESPN and TNT were up 6% versus non-NBA Cup games during the same time frame, as has the play-in tournament. And overall, thanks to a Christmas Day slate that delivered an average of 5.2 million viewers per game in the U.S. across ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus per Nielsen Fast Nationals rating. That's an 84% increase over last year. Viewership did seem to be on the rise leading into the Christmas Day slate. There was an average week-over-week increase of 7% across ABC, ESPN, and TNT every week in December. So far, this season to date, the NBA has generated a record 11 billion views across its social and digital channels, and the NBA has the largest social media following among all professional sports leagues, and is one of the largest social media communities in any brand. You add in men's college basketball, which has never been better, even if the women's side surpassed it during last year's March Madness, which we referenced earlier. I think the case could be made that basketball is the second most popular sport based on viewership numbers.
Anthony, viewership numbers are not. What do you think it is?
I gotta agree with Jay. I would say basketball as a whole. Baseball, I think it's America's passion. And
very regional, though. Very regional.
But it has been very regional, and obviously when you see like Los Angeles and New York teams heavily involved, you see a boost in viewership because those are the 2 big media markets in America. But as far as basketball as a whole, and we think back to the WNBA as a result. Part of it was the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Some of it was, part of it too was the having good teams. You had Agent Wilson and the Sparks looking to three-peat. You had the Liberty involved, the Connecticut Sun. You had some really
Agent Wilson
teams.
and the Aces, by the way.
And the Aces, by the way. Sorry, but you also saw like an increase in viewership for a WNBA final that was compelling between the Lynx and the Liberty that literally went down to the 5th of deciding game with some with all the games being very close. The NBA Christmas game day games, it helped that all 5 of those games were very competitive. It started with the Spurs and the Knicks game going down to the buzzer. And then obviously you had the Lakers Warriors classic in prime time. So and then we think about the college basketball, the men's side of things. You have great teams like UConn looking to kind of three-peat. And then on the women's side, you have great individual players. You have Paige Beckers, you have Juju Watkins, Hannah Hidalgo, and you have a lot of the storylines on that side of the women of the bracket as well. So for me, it has to be basketball. I mean, if we were talking a world sport, and Sean would agree with this one, it would definitely be soccer, without question. But because we're talking about just America's sport and sports here in America, Football is definitely the king, but the NBA has got to be it's got to be second. It's something that my brother even mentioned. Go to a playground. You're not seeing too many kids playing baseball these days. They're playing basketball. Um, because it's the easiest, it's the one sport you don't need a whole team to play. You always play one on one. So yeah, I mean, basketball is definitely the second popular sport in my opinion.
Sean, I know baseball definitely should have a case also here, especially depending on who's in the World Series every single year. What's your opinion?
It is. It's a great question, and it's how you define it. I'm trying to keep my ear to the street, observe when I drive around. Anthony made a great point in terms of expanding it to look at soccer. Like, if I see what kids are playing, what parents are taking them to, the term that's popular is soccer mom. That really doesn't apply to many other sports. And that could definitely grow because I look around and yes, I see people wearing football jerseys, but for whatever reason, I see more soccer jerseys on my fellow citizens in the street, a wide variety of them from all different parts of the world than any other sport. And that's because of the, expansion and interest. Like, Jay's always been a Michigan fan. He likes Michigan. I kind of like Ohio State, Auburn. I don't have connections with these teams as having gone to the schools, like when they're from out of state. One of my friends is a 49er fan, never lived there. I always thought that was kind of silly, so I always had a sense of, all right, I like to follow them, but I'm not like, the most devoted because I have no affiliation with Columbus or anything. But now you have these people who like have nothing to do with the textile or shipping industry, yet they love Arsenal, yet they love, Liverpool, yet they love, Bayern because of the way soccer especially has expanded their footprint in the United States. And I'll give you one other sport that is sort of underappreciated in terms of its popularity. You drive cross country or through towns and suburbs, you put on your GPS, you do not have to look too far for a golf course. As opposed to football, which you guys are coronating as the most popular, you look at the sports like what Anthony said, basketball, golf. You look at sports that people can actually participate in, they have a lot of popularity in their own right. And it's a bit underappreciated.
It's true, and it's actually kind of funny because that's one thing that football doesn't have and has actually lost interest in the last few years, which is why there's always these play 60s stuff and things that's like, get on it.
Football and hockey is not very practical to participate in. I mean,
hockey it's funny because I think out of the four major sports, football might be the least practical to participate in right now. Pedro, considering probably you're down to basketball or baseball for this choice, I would think, and considering the success that the Knicks have had and the success that the Mets have had, both really bring a fan base in New York, especially the Knicks. I think if this was what's top number 2 in New York, or even what's number 1 in New York, it might be the Knicks, no question.
Yeah, I think the Knicks are number 1. I think probably even the Mets are number 1 at this point. But then
that would be a good choice, especially with Soto.
The Knicks, though the Knicks are slowly catching up. They've been very good the last couple of years. And then, it's great, as a Knicks fan, dealing with all these bad years. Now, all of a sudden, James Dolan is kind of leaving the basketball people like Leon Rose, letting them run the team and stay the hell out of the way. And they're getting these players, Brunson and those guys. And, they've just been, they let them alone and, you let these people, like they did the Rangers. Well, now, though, the Knicks, you leave them alone. They got to the conference finals, the semifinals, conference finals. And I think, though, the Mets are enjoying, if they keep it up, now they got Soto, and they have an owner who's willing to spend. It's not like, the Wilpons are there. Steve Cohen says, we're going to spend. We're not going to play second fiddle to the Yankees anymore. We're going to get the best players. Now, I hope he gets Alonso. That's the next thing. But anyway, with this signing of Soto, Steve Cohen is saying, we're not playing second fiddle anymore. That's the way I feel.
I agree, and
And
that's going to be something to look forward to, especially with the big free agent signings that we've seen this offseason.
yeah,
So, a very good, healthy discussion, guys. Let's get back to some awards. In the words of the Beastie Boys, "Hey, ladies." But anyway, we don't need the Olympics anymore to have a female athlete of the year award. Actually, though, the Olympics in 2024 from Paris helped boost three of our four nominees, and the exclusion of the fourth nominee caused controversy, but I think she'll survive. We'll start with the GOAT of gymnastics. That's Simone Biles. We can finally wash away the twisty issues of 2021, and we could replace that with a second all individual, all around medal in 2024. At a vault gold, a team gold, and long suffering Bears wife now. And it's just another day in the Olympic office for the most decorated U.S. gymnast ever. Caitlin Clark, guard, Iowa and Indiana Fever. Feel like we've talked about her before. We've told you about her accomplishments with the Fever this year, but don't forget, for the second year in a row, she got the Iowa Hawkeyes one game away from a national title in women's basketball, the most marketable female athlete, and the most marketable athlete overall rolls into 2025. Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. So easy to forget what the pride of New Brunswick, New Jersey did in 2021. Let me remind you about her 2024. A world record in the 400-meter hurdles. She defended that title. And helping seal the U.S. track with a women's 4x400 and a dominant second leg that helped seal it. True superwoman of track. Asia Wilson, U.S. women's basketball and Las Vegas Aces. The MVP of the Women's Basketball Olympics tournament with 18.7 points and 10.2 rebounds per game en route to gold. The U.S. has Asia Wilson, and the rest of the world doesn't. 26.9 points and 11.9 rebounds per game for the Las Vegas Aces, and probably the most dominant WNBA season ever. The Aces have Asia Wilson, and the rest of the league doesn't. Enough said. And the winner is, there's only room for one goat, and that goat actually tumbles. Jay, it's U.S. gymnast Simone Biles. Caitlin Clark can't win everything, but what could be Simone Biles' last stand? She might be in Los Angeles in 2028. Simone proved that she's the greatest women gymnast of all time.
Yeah, and honestly, Rabbi, I think if this wasn't an Olympic year, I have a feeling that Caitlin Clark might have been a double award winner, but this was an Olympic year. So it's honestly no surprise that in what may have been her swan song, the GOAT of Olympic gymnasts wins this award. Simone Biles, at 27, an age where so many previous Olympic gymnasts have long retired, showed us all what it truly means to be one of one. She became just the second woman to win two all-around golds at an Olympics, the first to do so in non-consecutive summer games. She left Paris with 3 golds and 1 silver, increasing her career haul to 7 golds, 2 silvers, 2 bronze. By winning the all-around and vault title, as well as leading the USA to the team gold, her Olympic medal count of 11 ties her with Vera Kaslavaska as the second most decorated female Olympic gymnast ever. I hope I said that correctly. And she now has the most Olympic medals of any U.S. gymnast ever. I think about just how far she's come from that 16-year-old we first met at the Rio Games and everything she's been through along the way. If Paris was indeed the last time we'll see her give us moments of wow, then it's been a privilege to watch her rise from the ashes of Tokyo like a phoenix and reclaim her spot on the Mount Rushmore of USA Olympic women's gymnastics, along the likes of Mary Lou Retton, Shannon Miller, Nastia Liukin, and Allie Raceman. I'm reminded of something I mentioned on our Olympic wrap-up show back on August 15th, and I feel compelled to repeat it here. Regarding her advanced age of 27, I found it hilarious that she felt compelled to apologize to her Rio team captain, Allie Raceman, for calling her grandma back in 2016, especially since Raceman was just 22 at the time, and prior to Biles winning golds in Paris, was the previous holder of oldest U.S. Olympic gymnast to win a gold medal title. So, with all due respect to Caitlin Clark, for all the reasons I mentioned in our Rookie of the Year award segment, and Asia Wilson, who led the U.S. Olympic team to gold, and to Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, who put on the most dominant display of Olympic track and field I have seen in a very long time across 2 different disciplines in Paris, Simone Biles is hands down the most deserving winner of our Female Athlete Award as we've had in a long time, maybe since the last time she won it back in 2016.
Sean, in an Olympic year, you can always find more female nominees. And say Simone is a pretty good one.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I mean, I think I had an issue with people giving her so many accolades for performance when she showed a lot of fortitude in supporting her team, but not actually coming through in the last Olympics. Here, she came back and she dominated the field. And she, with her wonderful competitive spirit, good sportsmanship, and leadership, like you said, arose to the great heights that she has previously realized. In terms of sheer dominance over the long run, uh, Katie Ledecky also deserves quite the honorable mention. I mean, in these disciplines, when you see in these long distance swimming events, and it's another event like long distance running where I don't understand the intricacies, but I could understand how she is just leaps and bounds and lapping other competitors who this is what they've dedicated their life to, and they've made the Olympics. And it looks like somebody who's in college dominating grammar schoolers when she is going back and forth. And 4 straight gold medals in one of the disciplines. And, I just don't see anybody. It's a quiet sport in terms of swimming. She's not a loud, boisterous person. She doesn't really crave the limelight. She's quite understated. But, her dominance in women's sports to me is unparalleled.
Yeah, it's funny because men's swimmers not understated in any way, shape, or form through the years. Pedro.
Marshawn, you could also,
No, you're lovely. I'm actually want to talk about Marshawn.
Yeah.
Pretty often, and we do it over here. But Pedro.
Simone belongs in the, as they say, the Mount Rushmore female athletes and especially gymnasts. I mean, she is incredible. I mean, she and Ledecky's mentioned the Ledecky, two of the most decorated female athletes. This was the first Olympics where there were as many women competing in the Olympics as there were men. Wow. And that happened. That also brought Simone Biles and the women's teams to more prominence, giving them more the spotlight. Simone and again, and Ledecky and Asia Wilson and those people, those ladies, those young women. I mean, I think this was the year. This was the spotlight. This was the year that the women were spotlight. The Olympics, the 2024 Olympics in Paris. I think this more than any other year in Olympics history. That's the way, that's the way I feel.
And the women's team actually had the last gold medal game in the Olympics on the last day, and the men's was actually the Saturday beforehand. Anthony, I know you've talked about Simone a lot. I know we've talked obviously about Caitlin a lot on this show. It's kind of funny because you don't throw Sydney and Asia Wilson to the side, but any other year it almost seems like a cliche. They're winners here.
Yeah, I mean, you got the nominees that did become finalists. You could go that way too. And get by Gabby Thomas, 3 gold medals track and field. Nafisa Collier pretty much single-handedly carried the Minnesota Lynx through that WNBA final series and almost single-handedly won that Game 5 against the Liberty in the Barclays Center. And Sean mentioned Kaylee Ledecky. How about the possibly future of swimming in Summer McIntosh? Team Canada, 3 gold medals, and actually carrying a flag on the closing ceremonies. How's that the cap of being an 18-year-old at the end of 2024? You think about obviously Brianna Stewart and Leslie finally bringing a championship to the Liberty, but the finalists themselves are Asia Wilson. Team USA doesn't beat France for that gold medal without Asia Wilson's brilliance, and even throughout that whole tournament. And she's probably the first role player to get a standing ovation in a Rose Stadium. Playing against the Mercury early in the season, she got a 40-point triple-double and got a rousing standing ovation, which pretty unheard of. But when you're that good, and look, brilliance is recognized regardless of who's the audience. But when you see Simone Biles and everything that the scrutiny that she got at the end of the Tokyo Olympics, and in some cases not always from the sports world, there was a lot of outside criticism that came her way. And the way she was able to bounce back and kind of remind everyone of why she's one of the most decorated Olympians of all time and the most decorative United States gymnast of all time with 3 gold medals and hitting 18 for 18 of her routines. And obviously, when you have a set of moves and routines that are named after you, that you're probably the only one who can pull off, that speaks volumes of what you've been able to do, not just for yourself and your legacy, but what you have been able to do with elevating the world of gymnastics. And what she, if this is her swan song, it's a hell of a way to go out as far as Simone Biles, pretty much putting a cap on everything, and making people forget, reminding people, if you've seen the documentary on Netflix, how she's been an advocate of mental health the last few years. That these athletes are people as well. They're individuals. We forget about that sometimes. They have their struggles away from the playing surface and whatever case may be. But to how to deal with all of that and to come back 3 years later, actually, at the age of 26, 27, which is pretty much retirement age for gymnasts, and to be at the top of her game in a gymnastics field that gotten a lot better in recent years. Even her teammate Suni Lee, who is on this list, the finalists of nominees. That speaks a lot about Simone Biles, just the character and the gymnast and the competitor.
Yeah, I completely agree. Talked a lot about Biles. We talked about a lot about Clark. I want to mention the dominance of Levroni this year, defending the title in 400-meter hurdles, where it was expected to be a showdown. It wasn't. Spoiler alert. And what she did in the 4x400, she has many more dominant years ahead of her. And I think she can really go down as one of the greatest track and field runners of all time. She's just that talented and that really, really good. And I think she's also marketable to the entire sport. And I think she has to be recognized here, and she was as a finalist. A'ja Wilson. I talked about Steph Curry earlier. What A'ja Wilson did was did exactly what Steph Curry did, dominating in the Olympics, coming after a WNBA break, where she dominated in the beginning and the end of the season. Those numbers are ridiculous. The numbers that she had, basically really carrying an Aces team that was kind of a little struggling this year. They did not three-peat. They didn't even they lost to the Liberty in the semifinals this year of the WNBA. But what A'ja Wilson did with that 18.7 points, 10.2 rebounds a game in the Olympics, and then basically going for an insane 27-12 double-double the entire season. There was a reason why she was unanimous MVP, and it showed. I think this is a very, again, say it all the time, any of these 4 nominees could have easily won in any year.
Steve, one thing you didn't mention about that performance in the Olympics, the importance of it, because U.S. was tied with China for gold medal.
Yes, that's 38. Right.
So they would have been tied with China, and it's a big deal in terms of
national pride,
geopolitics,
national
pride, whose system. The U.S. dominated in terms of the overall medals, but the
golds,
golds
they had to kind of come back on that.
And it was the USA women, who you mentioned played on the last game, who put the U.S. over the top. And you know what I say about, because you guys spoke so nicely about Simone Biles, when she didn't perform up to expectations, what's so hard for an athlete to do at times, you see them get frustrated, they go back in the locker room. What Simone did is, even when she was in her worst position, she stood there, she clapped and cheered on the rest of her teammates. And that deserves in its own right a gold medal.
Even when she was doing that in the individual this year, where she could have even done more there. So we're going to move on, and God help me, this is a long one. Finally, what's a little WTF menu without the dessert? As you may have noticed in the earlier awards, we didn't have any tri-state nominees. That's what we do here. We give you a stacked 8 nominee lineup, good God, of what made us go WTF, good and bad, with the local teams of New York. Let's start with and this is all going to be, by the way, in chronological order pretty much. The New York Knicks and Philadelphia 76ers give us the most entertaining first-round playoff series that we've seen in a long while. They hadn't met for 35 plus years. Game 2 saw the Knicks come back from 5 down in less than 30 seconds. In Game 5, the Sixers' Tyrese Maxey had a 17-point fourth quarter and range that was basically from Harlem in Game 5, and a Knicks clincher in Game 6, despite blowing a 22-point lead. This is only our first nominee. A lot of Yankees noms over here, but this is a good one. The regular seasons of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. How do you take the 288, 41 homers, and 109 RBIs of Soto and top that? Judge's 322, 54 homers, and 144 RBIs. The numbers of J and J, Judge and Juan, made fans think about Eminem, Mantle, and Maris. Pete Alonso with his New York Mets down 2-1 in Game 3 of the Wild Card Series versus the Brewers launches the ball over the stands for a 3-run homer, sending the Merchants of Queens to the NLDS. What could have been a sad swan song in this final at-bat was the continuation of one OMG experience. The Knicks, they don't rest on their laurels after their playoff run from the past 2 seasons and send Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to the Minnesota Timberwolves and bring back 4-time NBA All-Star Karl Anthony Towns. It was a shock to all involved, including Cat, and the move of the Bodega Cat to the streets of Manhattan so far has proved fruitful for the Knickerbockers. The New York Liberty, one of the WNBA's original franchises, finally reached the champion mountaintop with an insane finals versus the Minnesota Lynx. Game 1 featured the Lynx coming back from 15 down against the Liberty with 5 minutes to go. A back-and-forth Game 3 saw Sabrina Ionescu have ice in her Liberty veins, hitting a logo 3 in the final seconds to help New York go up 2-1. Then Game 5 full of drama. Late free throws missed, late free throws made, and a winner-take-all OT that helped the Liberty finally give Barclays Center a banner. Jay, here comes the pain. Freddie Freeman's game-winning home run in Game 1 of the World Series for the Dodgers against the Yankees. Let's forget that now former Yankee Nestor Cortez should never have been in, but seeing Freddie Freeman go from a man who was hobbled in the NLCS to having his Kirk Gibson-esque moment, winning in Game 1 at Dodger Stadium, shows that we are romantic about baseball. Not romantic about this, though. Game 5, top of the 5th, Yankees-Dodgers. Sean, you cannot mention this again in what seemed like a formality that the Dodgers would need to close out the Bronx Bombers on the left coast in Game 6 or 7. New York Yankees took a 5-0 lead going into the top of the 5th inning. Aaron Judge pop fly error, Anthony Volpe error, Garrett Cole forgetting how to run to first to end an inning. The 5-0 lead turned into 5-5. You knew it was only a matter of time. Dodgers went on to win. Let's end the trio of Yankees misery. It's the Yankees treehouse of horror. Juan Soto taking the 4 train and transferring to the 7 train, signing the richest deal in North American sports history. 15 years, $765 million with the New York Mets. Steve Cohen, Mets owner Steve Cohen's pockets pay off, and the baseball world is turned upside down. You all can clap, it's fine. And the winner is, all apologies to Grimace, and all of the other Mets moments of 2024, we have picked Pete Alonso's clutch homer in Milwaukee as our WTF local winner. We're going to talk a lot about everything in pretty much 2 segments, but Jay,
yep,
this was the year of the Mets kind of locally.
Yeah, you know, the fact that we have 9 finalists for our local WTF award tells you what kind of year 2024 was for New York sports. And like you said, we'll get into all of that a little bit more in our upcoming roundtable conversation. Our nominees, 21 in all, covered the full gamut of description of this award: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Throwing a little bit of crazy there as a 4th one. All these finalists are worthy. Hell, all 12 nominees that didn't make the final cut were worthy. But even as a Yankee fan, I can't argue too much with our winner. Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world home run to win the pennant for the Giants over the Dodgers in 1951 set the bar in this city for epic sports moments. Giants came back from 14.5 games down on August 11th to tie the Dodgers and force a 3-game playoff to decide the NL pennant. Team split the first 2 games, took a 4-run 9th inning from the Giants, capped by Thompson's home run, which sparked one of the most epic home run calls ever from legendary Giants broadcaster Russ Hodges. I'm not going to do it justice reading it verbatim. It's on Google somewhere. You should look at it's on YouTube somewhere. You should look it up and listen to it. There's a long drive. It's going to be, I believe, the Giants win the pennant. The Giants win the pennant. The Giants win the pennant. But, Bobby Thompson hits into the lower deck of the left field stands. The Giants win the pennant, and they're going crazy. All of that is my way of saying that the home run Alonso hit against Milwaukee sparked similar vibes for me. Though I got to say, so did the Lindor home run in the Mets 8-7 come from behind win over the Braves that sent them to the playoffs. A New York sports moment that was nominated but didn't make the finals. As someone steeped in baseball history, obviously, moments like this always resonate with me, which is why, as painful as it was at the time, Freddie Freeman's walk-off home run to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat against the Yankees in Game 1 of the World Series also resonates. Few things stick in New Yorkers' collective sports memory like a game-altering home run. Thompson, Dent, Piazza, Boone. I just need to drop the hitter's name, and you instantly remember where you were when you saw it happen. Add the polar bear to that list, a deserving winner of our New York WTF award.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Anthony, there are just so many Mets moments from this year. We'll get to all of them, but which one encompasses this year the most for you?
It's a great video on YouTube. Go to the Mets YouTube page of the Mets flying back from Milwaukee, and they're listening to Howie Rose's radio call of Pete Alonso's home run that gave the Mets the lead. By the way, he hit over Devin Williams, who is now a member of the Yankees and one of the best closers in baseball. So that was not exactly an easy feat with Pete Alonso, who the previous inning dropped a pop-up in foul territory. And Jay, Rabbi, I was kind of texting back and forth, and
you got pointed at and laughed at by Milwaukee fans when that happened. By the way,
yeah, and we thought that was going to be the lasting image of Pete Alonso as a Met. And Pete Alonso knew he got all of it when he hit it because he celebrated before he even left the batter's box. That was not exactly a tower home run. That ball. This thing cleared the right field fence. But you think about this, it was an epitome because of the Mets season. I mean, to win the first game of a makeup doubleheader, to get into the postseason in dramatic fashion, and then Alonso's home run kind of set the stage for what became a pretty much a very memorable postseason run. And I hate to do it to the Yankee fans, Jay, Rab, I hate to do it to you, but the Game 5 debacle in the fielding, Sean mentioned Aaron Judge dropping a routine fly ball. That really wasn't the egregious error that stood out to me. The egregious one was Garrett Cole inexplicably not covering first base on a grounder that could have gotten the Yankees out of the inning with very little damage done. By the way, Anthony Fallopi had short hop on third base to Josh Chisholm that led to a runner being saved. So, and when you looked at that Game 5, that inning alone was like a season-long struggle with the Yankees as far as their fielding. And we talked about that in our post-World Series wrap-up show, that this is a team that, for as good as that been, and they were able to get around those shortcomings, that they played a Dodger team that, as they did to the Mets in the previous round, took advantage of a characteristic shortcoming. With the Mets, it was a tired bullpen and a pitching staff that wore down. And with the Yankees, it was still their own, not being able to get out of their own way as far as their fielding. And did you about the Knicks and Sixers? I mean, when you get a double bang out of Mike Breen, which happened on Dr. DiVincenzo Game 2, Tyrese Maxey hitting a 3-pointer from the logo to tie a game, and even a Game 1, like that whole series, you have to go back to 2009, Boston Celtics, Chicago Bulls to see a war just as riveting first-round series. That series was 7 games, by the way, that had a lot of memorable moments.
This series felt like it won 12. By the way,
this is a heavyweight fight. That it was just more like a war of attrition. Like the Knicks got banged up. Joel Embiid was not 100%. This was just a classic playoff matchup between division rivals who don't really see much of each other in the postseason. You mentioned both playoff series in over 30 years. But the Peter, like I said, the Pete Alonso home run, I think, was just it saved the Mets season. For us to, we don't get the Lindor home run against the Phillies. We don't get the great performance from Sean Manaea or even Mark Vientos in Game 2, his heroics, and so on and so on. If Alonso doesn't hit that home run and the Mets are done in the division series. Remember, in 2022, they lost in 3 games to the Padres at home. So they've literally been the only team to go the full 3 games in the wild card round, and each of the times they've been participants, but this time being on the winning side of it. And of course, I know I was on the couch screaming and yelling my ass off because I'm just that kind of fan.
By the way, the only teams permanently to go 3 games, by the way. No one went the year that they didn't go, so. But Pedro, I'm going to flip it over to Pedro here because so many Mets moments. The Alonso moment kind of happened in the middle of everything when you think about it. Allowed the Phillies series to happen. Even the Dodgers series had some good moments too.
I was there for the Pete Alonso home run. I was actually in the viewing party at Citi Field.
Great moment watching you guys.
And then when we saw Pete Alonso hit that home run, everybody was just jumping up and going crazy. I mean, it was just you have to be there to see it. It was like, I mean, it's just the feeling you have. Almost, I think it ranks right up there with seeing the Grand Slam single games like that, 1999. I mean, it was just amazing. And then, of course, an indoor home run that got them into the postseason. It was like, oh man, it was like they brought Diaz there. He blows. The Mets get a 3-run lead. They blow it, and then Lindor's home run came in the clutch, everything. I mean, it's the feeling. And then I was there. Actually, I was there for Game 5 against the World Series, and then the NLCS against the Dodgers. That was also, I mean, the Mets beat up. That was the Mets' last win in the NLCS. I mean, that was, unfortunately, the Mets season would end on Sunday. But I mean, it was a great experience seeing the Mets, who had the best record in baseball from June 1st on, to get to this point. I mean, now, hopefully now they have Manaea is back, by the way. They signed him for a 3-year contract.
3 years, $75 million.
It's and now, hopefully now they can re-sign Alonso. That's the next thing. As far as Freddie Freeman is concerned, unfortunately to the Yankee fans, he was sticking it to them like they've done to the Mets for years.
We know how you feel now.
Yeah. Yes. Now you know how we feel. Anyway, the Knicks playoffs, Knicks-Sixers series reminded me of those in 90s teams where they should showed grit against the Bulls, especially against the Rockets in '94. That's what that series reminded me of. They always. I mean, it's like I've never seen the Knicks show this much fight. Since then, and it really did. The Sixers series, and then back and forth game helped the Knicks at Game 6. I mean, it was a 90s game. That's the way I felt about it. And then when they got Karl Anthony Towns, people were kind of worried about it, but now they've won at least 7 straight games. And of course, we don't have to talk about we don't have to worry about talk about Soto. And as far as the Liberty is concerned, I look at them as the same. I look at it as the same as the Mets and Knicks. Never win anything easily. Never do anything easily, but they got it done. And as far as the Jets are concerned, Jets and Giants.
We're going to talk a little bit about some of the other moments, by the way, as we go. We'll talk about some of the other moments in just a second, Sean. As a baseball historian yourself, and you are a baseball, I would say, purist in its own way, watching the Mets do what they did is kind of something that you really have never seen before, kind of in a run, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of excitement because you didn't know if they were going to make the playoffs. They had that double header and with Atlanta, and I don't know if they made some type of arrangement. Didn't look like it the first game where it said, "Okay, let us take the first game. You can have the second game, Atlanta," because the Mets took off after that really exciting first game of that doubleheader. And those two series, they were just absolutely wonderful. You know, the excitement, it reminds you. And I was reading about it, the Yankees take it for granted because they're almost in the playoffs every year. I was reading the Mets have made the playoffs a total of like about 9 times since they were a team in 62 or 63. I mean, you got to cherish if you're a Mets fan, you're each time they make it.
Definitely,
It just doesn't
definitely.
happen every year.
Yes.
And right now with Cone grabbing Soto, the Mets are trying to be the Manchester City of Manchester, trying to
Not the
Oh,
greatest, not the greatest comparison right now.
yeah, no, don't worry, I'm moving on. That's what they're
Yeah.
trying to be, but it was so exciting, and it reminds me of the Freeman, as you guys were mentioning. There's a guy who just, it's almost like the natural where lightning strikes. We've seen that with, I remember with two Giants players, baseball Giants, Madison Bumgarner. When he was just pitching, he became,
Oh my God.
just this dominant World Series force. Another guy also on the Giants, Tim Lincecum. Nobody knows where he is now. But when he would pitch for those Giants teams, it was lights out for a couple of
She
years.
had like 6 more years. It would have been a Hall of Fame.
And Freeman had just one of those very special moments. Uh, Being a New Yorker, one thing which I think you guys overlooked is in the US Open, there were 4 Americans who made the semifinals. That's pretty fascinating because an American hasn't won a major now, an American male especially, in like 2 decades. I mean, that is really something. I mean, you really had a young guy, what, Taylor Fritz?
Yes.
He did wonderful. You had Tiafoe, he took out
It was
Blake
always
Shelton.
the greatest to watch. Always amazing to watch, by the way, when you watch
Yeah.
TFO out there.
Tiafoe had that early round victory against Shelton. I think that went 5 sets. And then you had on the women's side, you had Emma. Who am I thinking of? You had
I'll take a look at who you're talking about.
you had Pagula and Emma. And they made, Pagula made the finals. She lost 7-5, 7-5, but it was a new generation. I mean, Fritz is very young. Perhaps he can bring the U.S. men's game. I think they haven't won since Andy Roddick in about 2000.
They haven't, no.
Something like that. And I mean, we just grew up with some of us barely remember McEnroe and Connors winning a lot. Many of us will remember Pete Sampras winning quite a number, Agassi winning a good handful. And then Roddick underwhelming. He did win one, but he was expected to win more, and then none since then. So that just to have 4 Americans in the semifinals in Flushing was also something to behold.
That's more Emma. That's Emma Navarro, by the way, in reference to this.
Emma Navarro, yeah.
Right now, she had a very good 2024 as well. So I'm going to transition a little bit here because we talked about a bunch of stuff, and this is such a loaded category. I kind of want to have one more turn around the table here about other stuff in New York sports that you guys have noticed in 2024. I want to go first, though, and kind of mention this. We had an MLS Cup quarterfinal between NYCFC and the New York Red Bulls, a 6-seed NYCFC and a 7-seed New York Red Bulls. Now, everybody thought that Inter Miami, Messi's team, had broken records. They lost in the first round, but just watching a game at Citi Field in cold weather in October, but watching two teams that have had a rich history against each other. Their fans don't like each other. Their fans, it's kind of just like, it's one of the better rivalries in MLS, and watching two teams who had no expectations going into this year coming in, and then watching the Red Bulls win and then go on to the MLS Cup, where unfortunately they ended up losing to the LA Galaxy. That's something that kind of interests my mind. In a year that we've seen a lot of good, interesting New York teams make runs, we could have had a big one from the Red Bulls. They were the first ever 7-seed to make the MLS Cup final.
Yeah.
And again, that's a team that no one expected to be as good and very dominate in the postseason. I'm an NYCFC fan, though. I was a little upset watching that game on Apple TV. But that's really what I'm going to that's what I kind of thought about when I was watching and thinking of other nominees for this New York Award. Didn't put it in there, but I didn't think it would get one, but I thought that was something interesting. Jay, as we head into this roundtable, what other New York sport do you think, or New York moment do you think that you want to talk about in 2024?
I'm just gonna kind of like
Or encompass everything. Right?
I'm gonna kind of what I'm gonna do. Because it was definitely a pretty interesting year in New York sports, to say the least. I mean, as you can see from our previous segment where we handed out the local edition of the WTF Award, 2024 was another year that gave us proof that anytime you think you've seen it all, one of the local teams will prove you wrong. I talked about the Yankees and the Mets playing deep into October, and that was a capper to a wild, crazy season for each team in different ways. Judge and Soto giving us Mantle and Maris version 2.0, the Mets giving us their roller coaster ride that was nowhere near boring. The Giants and Jets were the complete opposite of the Yankees and Mets. They added insult to injury by pairing play on the field that we couldn't remotely even call mediocre with some off-field drama that painted both franchises in a less than positive light. I mean, the Giants, with the mishandling of both the Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones situations, would have been a bad enough black mark against John Mara, but throwing the planes flying overhead over the stadium demanding radical change, and the Giants' 100th anniversary season is one I'm sure they would like to forget. The Jets were the epitome of the worst kind of soap opera, with a cast of characters that I doubt even General Hospital writers could have come up with. I mean, Aaron Rodgers feuding with Garrett Wilson and Woody Johnson, the ready, fire, aim, rash firings of Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas just made the ineptitude of the on-field product look and feel even worse. The Rangers and Knicks made us smile in the spring with their playoff runs, highlighted by an Eastern Conference final berth by the Blue Shirts, where they gave the Panthers everything they had. The Knicks falling short in the Eastern Conference semis in 7 games to the Pacers, only because they just ran out of bodies. But sadly, only the Knicks are likely to repeat that good feeling this spring, as new additions Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges are starting to mesh with the returning core of Jalen Brunson, Josh Hurt, OG Anunoby, and Deuce McBride. The Rangers have unfortunately become a dumpster fire on the ice, and GM Chris Drury has added gasoline to that fire with his open for business letter and the Jacob Trouba trade fiasco. The Islanders and Nets are in the weeds on their rebuild, so I'm going to give them a pass for this year. I'm going to end my thoughts by giving the Red Bulls, which you referenced previously. You're welcome again, Paulie. And the Liberty, their Flowers is the only local teams to bring home the hardware. Sandy Brondello deserves all the coaching accolades for how she handled a team that had such high expectations and pressure. There was a super team narrative in certain quarters, with both Brianna Stewart and Jonquel Jones joining Sabrina Ionescu, and got them through a rough final series where they alternately looked dominant and incompetent across a full 5-game series that had a blown 18-point lead as a low light and a logo 3 from Ionescu as a highlight, and required overtime for them to take home the first title in franchise history. All in all, it was a hell of a year in sports across the 5 boroughs and out on the island. Here's hoping 2025 gives us more of the same, though personally, I prefer the good to outweigh the bad and the ugly, even just by a little bit.
I can't believe I'm saying this with hockey. At least we have the Devils, who are one of the league's best teams right now. Anthony, Jay put it pretty much encompassed most of everything. What is your take on New York sports as we close this 2024?
A great New York sports moment that's kind of got forgot about because of the misfortunes of the team this season. Go back to Chris Kreider's hat trick that pretty much bailed the Rangers out of possibly blowing a 3-0 series lead against the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 6 of that semifinal series. The Rangers are down 3-1. Rabbi, you and I were going back and forth because I was actually traveling back from Citi Field after a Met game. And I got back in time for the third period. I watched the first 2 periods on my phone. And Carolina had outplayed the Rangers through 2 periods. They were the faster team. They were the fresher team. They would just get to every loose puck. The Rangers just looked like a step slower. And then Chris Kreider in a Mark Messier type like performance scored. Became only the 9th player to get a national hat trick in the third period of a playoff game, and he did it in a Chris Kreider way. He was around the net. He deflected his one shot in. He got a crisp pass in around near the crease for his second goal, the third goal on a rebound. I mean, Chris Kreider was he's just everywhere around the net in the third period. It was just one of those. It was one of those performances that, regardless of what happens to the Rangers this season, I do think they're pretty much on the cusp of maybe tearing it down and having to rebuild because of everything that's going on with them this season. But Chris Kreider, I think he solidified himself as one of the all-time great Ranger postseason players. You go back to his first postseason appearance in 2012, and every postseason, it seemed like he was big. He was big on the biggest stage for the Rangers. And Game 6 against Carolina in Raleigh, just an unbelievable game that a lot of people talked about for about a week. Just an unreal performance. And think about the Islanders, Patrick Wall taking that team in transition and taking it and getting them back into the Stanley Cup playoffs.
And now they're in transition again.
Yeah, they were a team in transition and got into the playoffs against the Carolina Hurricanes. So we don't talk about hockey as much on this show until like the regular season, the playoffs. But those the two local teams, as far as the team that calls basketball going home and call UBS Arena home as well, they give us some positives in the spring with the Islanders getting in after a slow start and a coaching change. The Rangers giving Florida, a team that had really outplayed them for the much of that series, pretty much everything they had in the conference finals. Those are two things that stood out for me. Definitely, and kind of forgotten about because both teams are not exactly going through the best of times this season.
Hopefully that the end of 2024 is the low point for the Rangers, and Jake and Truba did eventually get traded after the Detroit will they or won't they situation in the offseason. Pedro, a lot of stuff to look at when you think of all that encompasses New York sports in 2024. Pedro?
Oh, yes. I mean, the one thing that stood out for me, like I said, it had to be, the Mets, obviously. And one thing that stood out to me again, the Mets and the Knicks. The Knicks, the sports in 2024, New York teams, I think New York had a balance of good, bad, everything, more good than
bad, and Jets and Giants is really how I would put
except for the Jets and Giants. You can leave them.
They're in like a different category of shit, pretty much, than the rest of them are.
But as far as I think it was great that New York sports, you had the Liberty finally winning their first championship after so many years, struggling for so many years. They finally win it after blowing 18 points, and the Jets and the Juan Soto, of course, signing the Mets, and and he and Judge doing very well in the playoffs and for the Yankees, and of course, people forget John Stark. I was looking through the categories, and nobody mentioned John Carlos Stanton's 2024 postseason.
We had him as a nominee in the local category just because
he
didn't even make it. So that's how stacked this was.
Yes.
Y'all had to vote for 3 shit Yank nominees and couldn't even put in a second good one.
Yeah.
So, Sean, good, bad, ugly. How do you really sum up this season? Do you have any moments that you also want to bring up?
You guys have summed it up. I think you've actually hit all the bases. When I was talking about the U.S. Open, a few times I would introduce you guys and whoever heard me to the qualifier, which is still going on. I think it's really one of the great aspects of New York sports that fans can take advantage of, because with the price of events skyrocketing and families being unable to afford to attend all the events that we're speaking about, the qualifier is still going on. And it's the week before the US Open. There's about 3 or 4 tournament days. There's the Arthur Ashe Kids Day, and it's really got a lot more popular. I've noticed in the last 2 years. I bring both of my children there. They run around where the fountains are. All the concessions are open. We usually buy one of those. They're like $25 each, but one of those signature cups where it has all the list of champions on it. It usually lasts about a year before it sort of internally cracks and you can't read any of the names anymore. But it's just a nice
Very
tradition.
quick.
And you
Very
could
quick.
it's really one of the good parts of New York sports that's underappreciated. You could be right up on the game, and these people are, they're playing for their lives. And, they want to get in the tournament so bad. And we've seen some people in the qualifiers do very well in the past half decade. And you can also see, which is great, the best players, they have a practice schedule. And you could go from Armstrong to the other big courts where they're setting up, and you can watch them hit the ball with their coaches. And it really is amazing to see. So it's one of the great parts of New York sports that's underappreciated, and all New Yorkers could take advantage of it. And it's a lot more comfortable than going that first week where, it's just so crowded. You can't move anywhere. You can't get into like any of the games because there's a big line and you're stuck in the sun and can't move. It's a great place with a lot of elbow room. Try the US Open qualifier if you haven't already.
Or you can have a box like Jay does. So that would help out. Very simple as that. Sean, Pedro, thank you for joining us tonight. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us in the process of doing this award show. And you are part of our OTSL family, and we hope to talk to you again as 2025 nears. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, let me give my pick then for best male athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead. I'm okay.
You guys aren't going to mention it. I think it's a terrible oversight, but Alexander Usyk. I mean, this guy, he's fought, I think, 22 or 23 times now in the professional ranks. Half of those have been for title belts. I mean, if you're interested in boxing, watch some of this guy's fights at cruiserweights. There hasn't been, he's like, in terms of technical ability, he's up there with Mayweather in terms of his just all-around ability, every angle, never looking hurt, always in control of the ring. He doesn't have that terms of, flash. And even, I mean, I don't think it's any insult to call Mayweather arrogant. I think he'd be happy with that, characterization. He was out there for the money. The thing that separates Usyk from a lot of professionals through the years is now he's fighting for something much greater than like trinkets and belts. He's putting his beleaguered country on the map. He's trying to send messages in his win. Like, he beat a proverbial giant in Tyson Fury, who is undefeated in boxing matches in his entire career. And I got to give a lot of credit to Tyson Fury in the sense that Tyson Fury really knows how to promote a fight. He knows that it's more than just all the
nobody is better at that.
Yeah. He gets up there, he talks, he makes it kind of fun. He brings a lot of joy to the fans. And, so he has the mouth and he's awkward. He just in terms of his height and his reach, very difficult. And look at what Usyk was able to do. Usyk is 50 pounds lighter. It's a half a foot shorter, and he has over a 6-7 inch reach disadvantage. And he's almost a natural cruiserweight, and still twice, the first, if you watch that 9th round, he really knocked Fury down into, he beat him from pillar to post for parts of that fight. And it was somewhat close. And then the second, I would say he was technically dominant. And,
Easily.
And that type of performance twice in 1 year easily gets my, best male athlete in boxing. Undefeated champion. And after, you get a lot of people talking, you got Dubois in the ring saying he wants to challenge him somewhat respectfully, and you got to make a spectacle. That's boxing. You have Fury complaining about the scores. What is Alexander Usyk doing? He's thanking the man upstairs, and then he comes out with a sword, and people are wondering, what is this sword? It's a 400-year-old sword of someone named Ivan or Ivan Mazepa, who was fighting for Ukrainian independence in the late 1600s and early 1700s. And he's hoisting it around, pretty much cutting through all the normal stuff you hear in just a boxing match. He is a transcendent figure and easily is the ultimate athlete of 2024.
And
Rabbi, I
go
just got
ahead.
because I
Go
know
ahead,
Sean's
Jay.
going to bounce. I don't agree with Sean naming him as the athlete of the year, but I will say this. There was a terrific piece on him in Sports Illustrated, the current issue of Sports Illustrated, talking about everything that Sean mentioned. And Sean's basically only touching the surface about what this guy is doing above and beyond what he's doing inside the ring to bring attention to what is going on in his home country. He wanted to stay home, join the fight on the front lines. It got to a point where other people in the government told him, "We appreciate that. It means everything to us, but you can do more for us outside the country, in the boxing ring, where you are in the public eye, to be able to bring more eyeballs and more ears to what is going on here at home." I mean, may not be athlete of the year, but humanitarian of the year, yeah, he's up there.
And
To
as
me,
we take,
there is
go
no
ahead, go ahead.
title or designation in sports that means more than heavyweight champion of the world. It's the legacy of Jack Dempsey. It's the legacy of Rocky Marciano,
Do they
Muhammad
have
Ali.
8 belts, by the way, when that happened? Considering the fact that that's one of the bigger issues, in my opinion, of boxing. But well, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, it absolutely is. I hate to do the weird transition out, but I will do it.
All
Sean,
right.
Pedro, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will talk
Appreciate
to you in
you.
Thanks for
2025.
Thank you so
me.
much.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for everything. Thanks for letting
Bye-bye.
us on.
Bye,
Take it easy.
guys. All right, as we continue on here, hold on a second. We're gonna just get into that in just a moment. We have 3 awards left, gentlemen. Let's go. Sure, the towns that house our 4 nominees for best college team they hold less than 250,000 people. Only one of them, by the way, is one of the top 100 populated cities in the United States. That's Boise State, by the way, at number 97. But what these 4 teams mean to their city is worth at least 1 million people, right? Anyway, nominees are Boise State football, led by possibly soon-to-be NCAA all-time leading rusher Ashton Jeanty. The 3rd-seeded CFP Boise State Broncos head into their first playoff game tomorrow, actually, at the Fiesta Bowl as a 12-1 team, and they're ready to shock the world and those Nittany Lions of Penn State as well. Oregon football is actually next, and they're responsible for that 1 in Boise State's record, by the way. There's only 1 undefeated team in the FBS section of college football right now, and those are Eugene's finest, the Ducks. The top seed in the CFP look to get national title number 1 for Austin Stadium, starting at the Rose Bowl in 2 days versus conference foes, still goddamn hard to say, Ohio State. South Carolina women's basketball, Paige Beckers, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Juju Watkins. All these names are individual praise in the women's game of college basketball, but thanks to Coach Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks, none of those players have a natty to their name. Well, Angel does, but not this year. These women went unblemished in South Carolina for the 23-24 season. UConn men's basketball, baby. From February 24th, 2024 to them getting their 1 shining moment, RIP Greg Gumbel, here's what back-to-back national champions do. 13-0, Big East regular season title, a Big East tournament title, another national title, and 2 games won only by single digits in that entire run. Is that good? And the winner is UConn men's basketball. Jay, I guess that's good then.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like each one of these teams is a deserving finalist for this award. I mean, Dan Lanning's Oregon Ducks, the nation's number 1 team. In their first year in the Big Ten, they go undefeated. They win convincingly along the way, including in the conference championship game, en route to the number 1 overall seed in the inaugural 12-team CFP. the Boise State Broncos, my preseason pick to be the Group of Five automatic CFP bid. Going to pat myself on the back for that one. Behind running back Ashton Jeanty, who was my pick for the Heisman, and he showed everyone that there is. They showed everyone that there is good football being played outside of the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. I mean, they took Oregon to the wire in a 37-34 loss back on September 7th. South Carolina women's basketball. I mean, what more can you say about what Dawn Staley has done with that program? They went 38-0 en route to their third title under the Philly product. I mean, what she's done at that program is nothing short of spectacular. But as I said to everyone in our voting process, and I mentioned it earlier when we were doing our handing out our Best Coach Manager of the Year award, a team going back to back will always get my vote. The first one is hard enough, but to repeat when every opponent on your schedule has extra incentive to take you down, well, that puts a team like UConn men's basketball on a whole different level as far as I'm concerned. Dan Hurley's Huskies were ranked either number 1 or number 2 from week 11 onward, and they just destroyed every team in their path, winning every NCAA tournament game by double digits, with 14 being the closest margin of victory. They ended the season with a 13-game winning streak that concluded with them cutting down the nets after a 75-60 win over Zach Edey and Purdue. To me, it's a no-brainer, and it's no disrespect to the other 3 finalists, but to me, UConn, hands down, was the best team in any sport in college athletics this past year.
I'm sure I can find a lacrosse team, but we won't get into that right now. Actually, I can't find a lacrosse team. Anthony, football always has a kind of incomplete year when you get into it because we're still kind of in the middle of what is now the CFP playoff, but any other year, UConn basketball would easily do this.
Yeah, UConn basketball to me is the clear winner here, and it's definitely got a knock on with the Lady Gamecocks are able to do under Dawn Staley and going undefeated to a national championship, which didn't get enough attention in the big headlines because of who they beat in that national championship game. It was Caitlin Clark and Iowa, and it was just more the individual got more of the attention than what the team was able to do. But what UConn did, and being the first team to go back to back in 2 decades, I was the Florida Gators, the last team to do it. They set the school record for regular season wins, total wins, with 28 and 37 respectively. First Big East team to win 18 conference games in the regular season. In the postseason, became the first team since the tournament expanded to 64 teams to win every game by, as they mentioned, by at least 14 points. Every game, every victory was by double digits, including the national championship game against Purdue. They set records for the tournament for the longest combined margins of victory in all those games with 140 points. And by extension, the largest average margin of victory of those games is 23.3 points per game. To talk about dominance in a postseason run in college is an understatement. And Dan Hurley, the job he has done with the Husky team that have floundered for a few years. You think about there was kind of the stuck in a muck transition, and then obviously getting back to the Big East, where they belong, and kind of get this program a resurgence, and just watching that championship run, and we did a March Madness special, and we talked about other teams, but UConn. I think they were a fourth seed in the Big East tournament, if I'm correct, the previous year, last year, and still was able to win the Big East tournament. Yeah. I'm asking you, Rabbi, because yeah.
What were you asking?
Yeah, I was asking.
They didn't win the Big East tournament last year, but they won the NCAA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, and the fact that they were able to even take it up a notch the next year, just like I said, they were hands down the winner of this category, just because it's not even about winning a championship. It's literally how they did it. It's like they did not break a sweat in any of their games. But you talked about the discipline on both ends of the basketball court and being a disciplined basketball, a well-coached basketball team. That is kind of definition of it, and they just steamrolled their opponents, regardless of who it was in the regular season and the tournament.
36-37 of the last. So UConn, in the last 37 games that they have played in the contiguous 48 states, they've won 36 of them, regular season and postseason. There are 3 in Hawaii that we're going to put off to the side, which is why they're currently 11th this year in the polls. But again, 36 of 37. That's all their pretty much games on the contiguous 48 states in 2024. That's insane. And just a shout out to all of the players that really made their contributions into the tournament. Stephen Castle, he was a top 10 player in the 2023 has 12.5 points, 5.7 rebounds, 21 points in Alabama in the Final Four, 15 in the title game. Donovan Clingan, who back again this year, almost when Donovan Clingan, 15.3 points, 8.3 rebounds a game. He's just been insane, had a 14-14. Elite 8, he had a double-double, and he was only playing at times 20 minutes of action. And Tristan Newton, who was transferring from East Carolina the year before in the first national championship game, did it again. He did better. Averaged more points per game, almost two rebounds more per game, and 1.5 more assists. Dan Hurley is the best coach right now in college basketball, bar none. Dan Hurley is going to be a great recruiter for UConn in the years coming up. It's just really a question of, can UConn keep their national prominence? Can the Big East keep up their national prominence as UConn plays through a Big East season, gets them ready? Because Big East season last year was just as dangerous as the tournament. And Dan Hurley's always said, the Big East season gets me ready for the tournament because that's a dogfight. There's a reason, again, going back-to-back is insane. Going back-to-back and doing it in double digits is something that doesn't even register on the scale because it really shouldn't happen, and it has. And the merchants of stores are really the reason for that happening. There is no I in yes, indeed. There's no I in team, and because 2024 was special, there was no NBA champion Boston Celtics, Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, and World Series champion in best team. Sorry, Celtics have better competition in the postseason. Sorry, Panthers don't almost blow a 3-0 lead in the Cup Finals. And sorry, Dodgers, I'm fucking bitter. I'm sorry. Can't get that taste out of my mouth. 4 unique nominees here, and here they are. There's only one of the major sports that gives us a nominee, and that's football. It's king. And it's the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Hate them, love them. A Super Bowl title where the Chiefs had to win road games for the first time, and win them as an underdog, by the way, for the first time. They are an insane 19-1 in the calendar year 2024. I think I think they're actually 20-1 now, by the way.
That's insane, Rabbi.
Yeah, it's 19-1 in calendar year 2024. And that makes me look at the Chiefs and wonder what damn God they're praying to. The New York Liberty sealed the deal to win the WNBA Finals in 2024. And from superstars like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu to Finals MVP Jonquel Jones, 2 unsung heroes like Nora Sabally and Leon Fyback, one of the OGs of the WNBA, made the 27-year wait for a title kind of worth it. Sure, you can have the lure of the 1992 Dream Team, but the grittiness of the 2024 U.S. Men's Olympic Basketball Team reminded everyone that the world's in America pretty damn close. However, Steve Kerr and the Avengers, they don't have a true Thanos to slay, but they gave America their 5th Olympic gold in a row. Maybe Jokic, I'm not sure. But it's not as much as our final nominee has won in a row, and that's women's Olympic basketball. They've won 8 golds to their name. Back and forth with France Olympic finale, that was pretty much in doubt, but they still got the job done. The queens of the WNBA, though, there are winners. The New York Liberty finally bringing a title to the original WNBA franchise. And Jay, well worth the wait.
Yeah, only in an Olympic year, Rabbi, could the winners of the Larry O'Brien and Lord's Trophy and Lord Stanley's Chalice not be finalists for this award. But what the USA men's and women's Olympic basketball teams did, having to dig deep to get their wins against host country France en route to winning both gold medals, makes them deserving of being here. But in a country where the NFL is king, only a local team winning their first ever championship could take this award from the Kansas City Chiefs in a year where they won the second of their back-to-back Super Bowl titles, and that's why the Liberty are our professional sports team of the year. As I mentioned in our Year in New York Sports Awards segment, the season the Liberty had en route to winning the franchise's very first title was no easy road. Despite the fact they blew through the regular season, going 32-8, best record in the league. Breanna Stewart led the team in scoring, 20.4 points per game, along with 8.5 boards and 3.5 dimes. Jonquel Jones put up 14.2 points per game, a team-leading 9 boards and 3.2 assists. And Sabrina Ionescu was second in scoring at 18.2 points per game, tops in assists at 6.2, and third in boards at 4.4. He lost the first game of the finals by 2 in overtime, came back to win the second by 14, and the third game by 3 to take a 2-1 series lead, and then lost a grind of a game 4 by 2, and then outlasted the Lynx in game 5, winning in overtime after blowing a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter to send the game into overtime. The series was the epitome of hard fought and could have gone either way, as both teams had chances. But at the end of the day, the Liberty made just enough plays to come out on top. Look, Liberty fans, and I'm one of them, as is Anthony. We'll tell you, it was nowhere near pretty. At times, it was frustrating as hell. But after those early years in the league where they came up short, losing in the finals 4 times in the first 6 years of the WNBA, and then losing in the finals last year, all of us Liberty fans, the team, and the Big Apple will take this one happily.
Apparently I'm chopped liver because I watched Liberty too.
Yes, but Anthony and I go. When's the last time
I went the year before, by the way. I was at the Aces Liberty game last year. So, Anthony, after that slander, let's talk about the big year for basketball. By the way, I would have to say 3 nominees, and none of them are the NBA champion Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I know my brother's kind of upset with that one because he's a Boston Celtics fan. But
he could go watch his team win another.
Yeah, I mean, the Celtics, not to take away from the Celtics and the Florida Panthers, but the Celtics in particular, they were, without question, the best team throughout the regular season last year. And in the playoffs, it was basically a matter of what they beat themselves. And obviously, they overcame that obstacle. You want to say men and women basketball, the men's team coming back to beat Serbia in a game where it looked like they were all but out of it. And who knew Joel Embiid would be such a big contributor? Coming off the injuries and didn't look 100% early on in the tournament. And of course, we looked at Captain America LeBron James and Anthony Edwards being a contributor in that comeback, Kevin Durant. And of course, the gold medal game with Steph Curry's fourth brilliance. And you think about that moment of seeing LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry. And we talked about earlier in the show that Warriors-Cavaliers rivalry that was pretty much NBA gold for 4 straight years in the finals. And they were kind of the foundation for that rivalry and to see them on the same team. But probably the first and only time ever coming through for Team USA is definitely something that's going to be talked about. But the New York Liberty, you think about this organization, calling Massachusetts home and the early years being one of the original teams, and then kind of going through some lean years. I mean, think about how they end up playing at West. They were sold and then playing in Westchester County. And have in one of the smaller venues at the time, and Joe Tsai should get some recognition for this and buying the Liberty, but bringing them to Brooklyn, and recognizing that the Liberty had a fan base that was just passionate and didn't go away. They just wanted their team back home. And then we saw that with the team coming back full time to the Barclays Center in 2021, and kind of build to the championship. They won a Commissioner's Cup last year. We kind of forgot about that. and
lost it this year, by the way, to the same
lost,
team that they won the NBA Finals to. In fact,
yeah.
the Commissioners Cup and the NBA Final and the WNBA Finals in the last 2 years have been reverse results.
Yeah, and you think about and by the way, I was at the opening game of the postseason class against Atlanta. And you kind of saw the depth of this Liberty team kind of really play itself out with Phoebus and Vandersloot coming off the bench and Sablin and so many contributors that were coming key in Game 5. You think about finally slaying the Dragon and beating the Aces in the semifinals a year after losing to them in the WNBA Finals. Bouncing back after a monumental collapse in Game 1 against Minnesota to win Game 2 and Game 3. Sabrina Ionescu's logo 3, which by the way was pretty much all over the Nike billboards in Midtown Manhattan a couple of hours later to give the Liberty the series lead. And obviously that was a series that capped off a record-breaking season for the WNBA. But everything that went on with high ratings and obviously seeing current and future stars kind of get into the spotlight. To finally see one of the original team and the last original team to win a championship in the WNBA, and in sight and fashion, which we talked about New York sports. It was the same night the Mets lost to the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series in Game 6. So it was a bittersweet moment for me to watch one of my teams lose, but be euphoric about the other team winning. And I live, and obviously you guys know I live right, right down the street from the Barclays Center. And you can hear from my window the Hill fans celebrating in the street, and it was 27 years in the making, and just a long, after everything this organization went through, from being mainstays at the Garden to bag of arms and bouncing around from place to place in the last decade, to finally finding a place in the Barclays Center to becoming contenders with the addition of Jacqueline Jones and Brianna Stewart before the 2023 campaign. Drafted Sabrina Ionescu with the #1 pick in the 2020 draft. You just saw the foundation being built down, and to finally be able to cap it off with a championship and a ticket to a parade in New York, which it had been a while since we had got one of those.
15 years.
15 years. It capped off what was a great story for one of New York's teams that kind of got overlooked until this championship run. But definitely a big part of New York sports, particularly when you think about the influence of young women that go to these Liberty games and just women's sports in general.
I'm just going to move on real quick.
And Rabbi Jay, you've seen it at these games, and the Liberty is such a big part of the league, but to be part of New York sports and to finally bring one home is definitely a great story to cap off 2024.
And I will say this as we move on. I do get to talk sometimes. Watching Game 5 of that series had 2.2 million viewers, which was the most for a WNBA game, WNBA Finals game in a quarter of a century. And just note, it was going up against, as you mentioned, the Jets Dodgers Game 6. It's also going up against the Jets on Sunday Night Football. So you had such big competition, and something like that is still able on cable, nonetheless, to get 2.2 million viewers. So WNBA is hitting a high popularity. Liberty are one of the main reasons for it. Give the dream teams, by the way, they're kind of the Olympic teams for the men's and women's credit as well, because they did some crazy things this year. That was one of the best women's game I've seen. Well, closest women's game. It was ugly in a lot of other ways when watching it this year. And again, mentioned what Steph Curry did before. Just going back and reliving these nominees, it's something that kind of falls through the cracks a little bit, but it's not just Steph Curry doing Steph Curry things. It's Steph Curry adding another chapter to his legacy. And all of the talk sometimes about what the NBA is in 2024-25, getting the new stars in and the old stars fading away. It's kind of awesome to see Durant, Curry, James, and basically all of the older folks being the ones that really carry that team to the finish line. And those are still some of the marketable guys in American basketball.
Yeah, the core athlete was a Steph Curry. Better late than never.
Just he always has jokes, doesn't he?
Yep.
Anyway, whether your players are loyal to the original teams, like two of the four nominees for our final award of the night, Best Male Athlete, or if you're like the two traitors that flourished in year one with their new ball clubs, the accomplishments ring the same. Here are the nominees for our final award of the night. Josh Allen, quarterback, Buffalo Bills. The Bills traded Stephon Diggs to the Texans before the season, and all Josh Allen did was level up for the 13-3 Buffalo Bills. By the way, the Chiefs were 20-1 in 2024, which is even more insane. Allen's already accounted for 37 touchdowns and has become the runaway MVP favorite. Now we know who had the success. Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, and John Mara. Close your ears. Our next nominee is running back Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw the talent at MetLife Stadium of the former Giant, but once he moved to the city of brotherly love, next level unlocked. He's part of a number 2 seed playoff Eagles team with highs already in rushing yards. He is in the 2,000 club as of yesterday with 2005, and he is 101 away, by the way, from Eric Dickerson's record. And he also has highs in touchdowns. And again, the chance to break the single season rushing record as well. Brian, Joe, and John, you can now open your ears. Aaron Judge, New York Yankees, outfielder. What can I say that hasn't been said? Unanimous MVP, season better RBI, numbers, OPS, batting average at the 62 homer season of 2022, and he was a part of getting pennant number 41. Well, maybe the part that got him to the playoffs is And finally, Shohei Ohtani. Unanimous MVP in this league, just like Aaron Judge. He made his first year with the Dodgers count massively. 54 homers, 59 stolen bases, over 1 OPS, 130 RBI season, and clutch postseason plays and spots that gave him a regular season MVP, and in his first postseason trip, a World Series. And the winner is the person who has filed the LLC for the 50-50 club. Jay-Z, eat your heart out. Not now, anyway, it's Shohei Ohtani, Jay.
Yeah, what Saquon Barkley has done this season for the Eagles, those 101 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season NFL rushing record of 2,105 yards, a record that Dickerson vehemently does not want to see fall, is enough to make every member of Giants Nation weep. And Josh Allen has been as close to a one-man gang for Buffalo Thieves this season as there is in the NFL, and he's in serious contention for the NFL MVP with those 37 total touchdowns. Aaron Judge's 2024 season en route to winning his second AL MVP may have been an even better season than the one he had in winning his first in 2022. And y'all may remember he set a new AL single season home run record that year. But what Shohei Ohtani has done in his first season with the Dodgers and his first without being able to pitch, creating the first ever 50-50 club in baseball history, was nothing short of spectacular. We've talked about it often on the show throughout the year, but the numbers from his September 19th game where he reached the 50-50 mark bear repeating, as they are that epic and maybe the greatest individual game performance in history. And once again, Jason Stark of The Athletic has done the heavy lifting for me. 6 for 6, 4 runs scored, 3 homers, 5 extra base hits, 2 steals, 10 RBI. That's the top level stat line. The at-bat run scored homer RBI combination had never before happened in baseball history. Here's some more context on just how epic even just certain pieces of that performance were. 3 homers, 10 RBI, 2 steals. Stephen Kwan, who led off for the American League in the All-Star game, has never had a calendar month this year with 3 homers, 10 RBIs, and 3 steals. Neither did Bo Bichette, neither did Javi Baez. But this was just a single and singular day in the life of Shohei Ohtani. 6 hits in one game. Here are just some of the players who've never had a 6-hit game. Ted Williams, Stan Musial, Derek Jeter, and Pete Rose, who never did that once in accumulating his 4,256 career hits. 5 extra base hits in one game. Babe Ruth never did that. Neither did have the likes of Albert Pujols or Barry Bonds. Want some more context? Jose Abreu didn't even get 5 extra base hits all season, but Ohtani did it in a single game. 3 homers in one game. David Ortiz, Fred McGriff, and neither of the Vladimirs Guerrero are among the notable power hitters who have never left the yard 3 times in a single game. 10 RBI in one game. Plenty of names, but atop the list are such icons as Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, Henry Aaron, Ted Williams, and Miguel Cabrera. 10 RBIs and 2 steals in a single game. So before Ohtani, only 15 players had ever had a game with just the 10 RBI part of that daily double. You want to know how many stolen bases those 15 men combined for in those games? That'd be exactly 0. 10 RBI from the leadoff spot. Richie Ashburn was a Hall of Fame leadoff man for the Phillies. In 1959, he got to the plate 427 times in the leadoff hole and drove in a total of 8 runs. 65 years later, along comes this superhero from the planet Otanis, that's Mr. Stark's term, not mine, who drove in 10 out of the leadoff hole in 6 trips to the plate. So how many other leadoff hitters have ever had a 10 RBI game in the 105 seasons since RBIs became an official stat? Once again, that answer would be 0. And last but not least, per stats, in those 105 seasons, only one player has, during his entire career, had a game with 10 plus RBIs, a game with 6 plus hits, a game with 5 plus extra base hits, and a game with 3 home runs, a game with 2 stolen bases. We're talking about in any combination of games over an entire career, not necessarily the same game. I'll give you 3 guesses who that one player is, and the first 2 don't count. That's right. That one player is Shohei Ohtani, and he did all of it in a single game that created the first 50-50 season in baseball history and clinched a playoff spot for the Dodgers. On the Sports Lines, Male Athlete of the Year, no contest, full stop, mic drop.
Anthony, go ahead.
I would say that
Jay gets everything, and Anthony, you get the scraps, pretty much. That's how we do this here.
Well, if you call Ohtani's postseason debut scraps, then I'll take it.
Still pretty good, though.
Yeah, I mean, and think about this: his first playoff game, he hits a game-tying 3-run homer in his second at bat against the arch rival Padres in the division series. And in the NLCS, because the Mets, he was even better. I mean, he was 8 for 22 hitting, got up free space 17 times, and scored 9 runs, including 2 mammoth home runs. And that's in the games at Citi Field. I think one of them still hasn't landed at this point. But do you think about this? The season that he's had, look, you said there's no I in team, but there's one in Showtime, which is his nickname, FI. Ohtani has been, he proved to be everything and then some that the Dodgers invested in when they gave him that, at the time, record-breaking contract. And look, I'm all for more of Shohei Ohtani next season. As long as we get more of the real star of the show. That's Decoy, okay?
That's right.
I am begging for a Shohei Decoy bobblehead that they had part of their bobblehead night earlier this season. I'm going to have to pay a pretty good ransom for it, but I'm definitely on a file for it. Oh, by the way, he announced a few days ago he's actually expected his first child on the way next year. So what a 2024 with Shohei Ohtani. It started with controversy with his translator and the whole gambling soap opera, and it ends with his first World Series championship, his first postseason appearance, and he's going to be a dad for the first time. And also, like I said, we want more Decoy. And by the way, did you see the MVP announcement where Decoy just said, "Yeah, I'm over it," and just walked off?
It was like Paul Skeens, actually, when they got the Rookie of the Year announcement.
Oh, yeah, between that and Paul Skeens, like Libby Dunn was more excited for Paul Skeens than Paul
Yes.
Skeens was for the award. But yeah, two very memorable moments for two of baseball's greats, best talents by far. We talked about Skeens earlier in the show, but Shohei Ohtani, I don't know if we're ever going to see a season where he is able to do. By the way, he's going to eventually pitch again too. So we don't. It's almost like we don't even know how good Shohei Ohtani can really be because we haven't seen. I don't think we see the surface of how good Ohtani is on both sides of the baseball diamond, pitching and hitting.
One thing that we're going to talk about, one thing that I want to talk about real quickly before we head into our final thoughts of the year. The football nominees. Now, obviously, we talked about Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. I think they're 2-1 in this case, Judge and Ohtani, in who I would pick in this category. But you look at what Josh Allen has done this year, doing it with a pretty no-name cast, I would think. I mean, James Cook is much better now than he was 2 years ago, and Khalil Shakir, and Amari Cooper hasn't really done too much, and the numbers just the 63,731 yards this year and 40 touchdowns accounted for the man. 40, leading this team to a really good record of 12-3. They're going to be the 2 seed in the AFC playoffs, and he hasn't won an MVP yet in the NFL, and I think that's going to end going into this year. But the numbers for Saquon Barkley, and we do this the week before he might break the record. He doesn't have to play next week because the Eagles, like the Bills, are locked into their 2 seed. But only 8 players have ever hit the 2,000-yard club, and now he's one of them at 2,005 yards and averaging a ridiculous 125 rushing yards a game. He has had the most attempts in his career, the most touchdowns in his career, and it's just insane what has happened to him. And considering all of the warnings we got from preseason Hard Knocks and John Mara says if he goes blah, 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 and he has a good big season, I don't know I'll be happy. He's not happy. Spoiler alert. And just also seeing the fact that we're not going to pay all of this money featuring him in as a $12 million back in our offense. Guess what? Philly has done a pretty good job doing just that.
Yep.
And it just shows that a man can just change 2 franchises as much as possible. And I thought it wouldn't be great. Now, obviously, Giants do have a guy in Tyrone Tracy who is a 1,000-yard rusher this season, but the egg on their face, losing what might be the greatest rushing season of all time to your neighbors in division is almost highly criminal when you think about it in there, and almost a war crime when you think about it, even though it shouldn't be a war crime. But finally, as we finish up tonight, to prove that we're not negative Nancy's, Ned's, or any name that connotes the 50s, we need some positive energy in our lives, and that's why we end tonight with the things we loved about sports or made us love it in the calendar year. I'm going to start. The one thing that makes me happy for sports existence in 2024 is the existence of the 12-team college football playoff. More specifically, the first round that we saw less than 10 days ago when the CFP had home games, actual home games, not a distinction of jersey colors, for the first round games. Let's be honest. Your opinions may vary on if the right teams were facing the home teams in round 1 right before Christmas, but this isn't what this is all about. See that debate that I talked about earlier? If you want my opinion on debate about all of this. What this is about for me is the places that hosted round 1. South Bend, Indiana, home of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. State College, Pennsylvania, home of the Penn State Nittany Lions. Austin, Texas, home of the Texas Longhorns. And Columbus, Ohio, home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Seeing a true home field advantage at 4 of the most prestigious college football sites in America is a first-time experience that I'll never forget. Watching those games almost makes me feel like I was there, watching the true elements take over, giving the teams that have earned a home field advantage to have a advantage. College football will never be the same after this, even if there still may be a blowout here and there, and here again, and there again. And if you're angry over which 12 teams made the CFP or the existence of the games themselves, look at it this way. Back in the old days of the year of our Lord, 1997, a bunch of AP writers and coaches each chose a national champion, which may have not been the same. The bowls were rarely between 1 and 2. Appreciate where college football has come in the last 26 years. BCS championship to 1 versus 2, 14 playoff over the last 10 years, and now a 12-team sprint to the finish over this next month. If you don't like it, go watch the Pop-Tarts Bowl again on repeat with Iowa State and Miami. I heard they had a Pop-Tart trophy to give to the winner. Anthony, put down the Pop-Tarts and let me know what you loved about sports in 2020.
Oh, wow. You know what it is? I talked about this. It's a two-tier answer for me. One is definitely the Olympics. And watching Team USA and seeing this country, which I always feel like it's become very divisive for so many reasons in recent years. But to see, like, to be in a casino, I was in Vegas during part of the Olympics, to see an entire casino stop and cheer on a USA athlete was probably one of the best feelings that I have as a fan. Because it's something else when it's your country, it's your home that's being represented. It's national pride that kind of takes up another level. And we saw these great athletes, and we talked about Sidney McLaughlin-LeBron and the 4x400 relay team, and we talked about Simone Biles, Gary Thomas, Kayla Decky. But how about the rugby 7, the rugby team that medal for the first time, and the United States being introduced to Leona Marr, who ended up finishing as a runner-up for Dancing with the Stars. You think about, we talked about Steph Curry's brilliance. And how about another person that we talked about in one of our shows, Steven Nastorcik.
Nazarazic, by the way, Nazarazic, but that's
yeah, Nazarazic. And we talked, and we actually called him with Daredevil or Matt Murdock. At least I called him that.
Guy.
Yeah, because how he looked. He waited 2 hours for his only routine a day, and it ends up helping the United States medal. And by the way, he was part of Dance with the Stars the most recent season as well. But to see Team USA, obviously, the medal totals, but also a gold medal, and to see our country just how everyone just came together to root for Team USA, I thought it was a great thing. But another moment that made me love sports, and I talked about this with Rabbi a couple of days ago, the Detroit Lions' first home playoff game in over 30 years, and their first playoff win since the original Tecmo Super Bowl was released for Nintendo back in 1992. But it's a great story that goes with that, and you saw the emotion from the fans after that first playoff win. There was a young man that was in the stands, and NBC cameras caught him in tears, emotional. And it comes to find out his dad was part of the construction crew that built Ford Field way back in 2001. And now here he is, and him was 30 years later, his son in attendance, seeing him and his dad's favorite team do something that they hadn't done since Barry Sanders was on the team. Wow. And that's win a playoff game. And so much so that the football guys haven't. They got another playoff game at home the very next week en route to a trip to the NFC Championship game. So it's seeing great stories behind some of these teams and some of these athletes. And obviously being able to do it with you guys for what now, what is it, 13 years now, 14 years now, being part of the show on the Sports Line. And doing it with 34 shows this year, including the Olympics. It's been a great honor for me personally, doing it with you guys. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to what 2025 is going to dawn our way and what we're going to be able to discuss on this show with the rest of the On the Sports Line family. Obviously, Toplin and Nisa as well.
We'll talk it, yeah.
As part of that. And like I said, it's been a great 2024. It's looking forward to an amazing new year, and we get to top it off with a possible a Sunday night winner take all that we get to talk about on our next show as we preview the NFL playoffs and the national championship game.
We'll
on
preview the
January
NFL
20th.
playoffs. We're gonna hold off
So
on
it's
doing
gonna,
another show this week.
yeah, but it's gonna be a great 2025, and I'm ready to rock and roll with you guys, of course, and the rest of the all the sports side family.
Jay, take us home.
Yeah, I mean, I will echo Anthony's final thoughts there. I mean, whether we're ranting about things that piss us off or, gushing over, things that like what I'm about to talk about that remind us why we love sports. The thing I love most about sports in any given year is being able to do this show with you guys. As Rabbi knows, I was, when COVID shut the world down, I kind of wondered where we were going to take this show. Rabbi and I never didn't want to give up on it. We wanted to figure out a way to make it work. And the fact that we, the three of us were able to come together and, do this show as we're doing it in the iteration you're seeing now, during COVID, and we've kept it going 5 years now, in this format, is helped me get through those dark times. And it's my favorite outlet, away from the everyday grind, that is both work and occasionally life. But to my specific story, one of the biggest things I think we enjoy most about sports is seeing an athlete get a second chance at reaching the potential ascribed to them as rookies and remove the bust label from the narrative of their careers. The epitome of that this year is what Sam Darnold is doing as the accidental starting quarterback for the now 14-2 Minnesota Vikings. Darnold was the number 3 overall pick of the 2018 NFL draft by the Jets. He came into the league with high expectations after a sophomore season at USC where he led the Pac-12 in passing yards, 41-43, yards per attempt, 8.6, yards per completion, 13.7, and total touchdowns, 31, 26 through the air, 5 on the ground. He also led the conference with 13 interceptions. Darnold was supposed to be the Jets' next franchise quarterback. Unfortunately, the Jets didn't have much of a franchise to surround him with. He started 38 games from 2018 through 2020, and the team was 13-25, including 2-10 his final year at Florham Park. That was followed by 2 years in Carolina where things didn't get much better, though he played a lot of that time without Christian McCaffrey. Overall, across those first 5 seasons, Darnold was 21-34 as a quarterback, completed only 59.7% of his passes. He averaged just 210 yards passing per game, only 6.7 yards per attempt. He had a 61-55 TD to interception ratio and just a 78.2 passer rating. Then he spent a season in San Francisco, and while he barely played as the backup to Brock Purdy, he seemed to rediscover his confidence and his game during his time in the 49ers system. Moving on to Minnesota, and Kevin O'Connell's quarterback-friendly offense seemed like a good next step for his career, even if he was more likely to once again sit behind a young, highly thought-of quarterback in rookie J.J. McCarthy, the Vikings' first-round pick out of Michigan, who was coming off a national championship season with the Wolverines and was on the fast track to starting week 1 until a torn meniscus required season-ending surgery. The Vikings said all the right things about being comfortable with Darnold taking over and that he was fully capable of running the offense, especially with such weapons as the wide receiver tandem of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison at his disposal. But I doubt anyone, even Darnold himself, saw this kind of production coming. 68.1% completions, 4,153 yards, 259.6 a game, 8.2 yards per pass, 35 touchdowns against 12 picks, and a 106 passer rating. All marks, top 10 in the NFL in each category. Darnold has had such a season, he'll likely get some down-ballot MVP votes, that O'Connell trusts his arm enough to call for passing plays even when analytics dictate that he probably should hand the ball off. And that's led to games like this past Sunday against Green Bay where Darnold went 33 of 43, 76.5% completion, 377 yards, 8.8 yards per attempt, 3 scores, 1 pick, and a 116.1 passer rating as the Vikings beat the Packers 27-25. During the Vikings' 9-game winning streak, Darnold has completed 68% of his passes for 2,543 yards, 21 scores against just 7 interceptions. If you narrow things down to just the last 7 games, those numbers are even better. 67% completion, 2,012 yards, 18 TDs against just 2 picks. He hasn't been perfect, as his 12 interceptions in 3 games with a passer rating under 75 would indicate, but he has been pretty darn close, with only 2 games with multiple interceptions and 13 games with a passer rating over 100. Few things in sports are better than a redemption story, and no one has had one like Sam Darnold's. He more than deserves it after handling all the adversity and sometimes extremely harsh criticism thrown at him through those first 5 years, and he did it with class and professionalism. That's why this story is the thing that reminded me of why we love sports in 2024.
And thank you guys all year, because this is what podcasting about sports is what makes me love sports and makes me actually want to pay attention to sports every now and then, even though sometimes it is a screwed up society, especially with social media, debate TV, and a lot of other stuff. But
amen, partner.
Thank you guys so much. So for those here with me now, Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait. For those who were here earlier, Sean Roman and Pedro Hazel Jr. And for those who are part of our show family and couldn't make it tonight, Steve Ferguson, Nolan Topping, Nisa Petrilli, and Joe Tafaro. I am the man who filed to have this show to be called Enigma, but that damn hippie Aaron Rodgers got to it first for Netflix. My name is Steve Rabinowitz. YouTube.com is how you see this stuff on demand. If you've been watching this on Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines for almost 3 hours, thank you. And take a bow, Jay. Go ahead.
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, there's a link to a piece in The Athletic by Jason Stark that I made use of on this show, his annual MLB Strange But True year-end column, where he gives us his team, game, inning, and homer of the year, plus the Shohei Ohtani game and the White Sox epic futility. If you're a true baseball fan, Jason's columns are always a good read and definitely worth your time to check out.
We'll see you next week as we have a wildcard game, CFP semifinals, and a lot of other stuff to preview. Good night and have a happy new year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, everyone.
It's been a pleasure, gents.